I'm no longer the Prince of Asgard. I can't lift Mjolnir. I've lost the right to be Thor, and my father has abandoned me." Thor's voice was flat, his once proud armor muddied and soaked by the storm. He looked exhausted and disheveled, more like a broken man than the hero who'd stood on Asgard's great halls. Noah watched him for a moment, unsure whether comfort was his place. He lifted a hand and wove a translucent dome of magic that stopped the rain just above them. The three of them were dry, while the downpour hammered everything beyond the shimmering bubble. "Thor, come in here," Noah said. "You'll be warm inside. Your friend is waiting." Thor's face lifted at the word friend. Jane, of course. Jane was out in that rain. Relief and shame flickered through him. "Thor," a breathless voice called. Jane pushed past two agents and skidded across the mud, water splashing from her shoes. She crouched beside him and smoothed the wet hair off his forehead. "Are you all right?" "I'm fine, Jane. I'm sorry," Thor said. He sounded small. Sorry that he couldn't show her his finest self. Sorry he couldn't keep his promise to retrieve her research equipment. "It's okay. Come on. Get inside. You'll catch your death out here." Jane hauled him up, and they moved toward the nearby compound. Noah gestured to an agent, and the three were led into a plain, temporary room. White walls, a few cots, a couple of tables, Coulson's makeshift holding area from Thor's first visit. The chill from the rain lingered, but inside it was warmer, less desperate. "Wait here," Jane told Thor, pouring hot water into paper cups. "I'll get you something hot to drink." After Jane closed the door, the air in the room stilled. Thor started as a figure coalesced from shadow and mischief, Loki slipping in as effortlessly as a fox. "Loki," Thor said, puzzled and strained. "Why are you here?" Loki's expression was flattened. "I had to see you." He looked worse than Thor had seen him in years, face sharpened and eyes colder. He wasted no time. "Father is dead," Loki said, soft as stone. "He could not bear the trouble you brought. They say his heart gave out from anger." Thor went pale. Loki watched him, impassive. "The burden of the throne falls on me," he said, "and the terms of the ceasefire with Jotunheim. Your banishment is permanent. Mother does not want you back. I came to say goodbye. I'm sorry, brother." Thor swallowed. "No," he began, but Loki cut him off with a tired, almost patronizing smile. "No, you should be the one apologizing for making this necessary." They spoke their brief farewells like two men performing the last duty they owed each other. Loki departed. A conspiratorial twist of his mouth promised something darker. Jane returned then, placing two steaming cups in Thor's hands. "You look awful," she said gently. "Tell me what happened." Thor forced a smile and sipped, hiding the news he'd been given. "It's nothing. We should leave when you're ready." He told Jane he might not be able to recover the devices he'd promised her. Her disappointment was quiet but understanding. They sat there, trying to warm themselves and each other, while outside, Loki slipped back toward the crater where Mjolnir lay half buried in mud. He approached the hammer with the mingled longing and jealousy that had long shaped him. If only he could lift it, if only the people could worship him as they worshipped Thor. He wrapped his fingers around the handle and tried. Mjolnir did not budge. "Only one who is worthy may lift it," he muttered in disgust. He hauled and cursed, then let the handle go with a nasty laugh. "Not even for me." A human voice answered from the rim of the crater. "Mortal, are you speaking to me?" Loki turned to find Noah standing there, wet but composed, as though he had not been standing in a storm at all. There was something in Noah's posture, a confidence that did not belong to most mortals. Loki sneered. "Mind your tongue, Midgard man. I am king of Asgard." "No one needs a king who demands it," Noah said. "Your brother has what it takes." The word hit a nerve. Loki's smile hardened into a dangerous curl. He flicked a throwing knife toward Noah, but Noah caught it between two fingers and tossed it aside with a mocking, "Is that all?" Loki snapped green energy into being and sent it hurtling. Noah raised a hand, and the runes of his magic swallowed the attack whole. The light crumbled into nothing in his palm. He made a quick motion with his hand, and two razor-edged gusts of wind slashed out, flattening a length of iron railing and sending agents ducking for cover. Loki grinned despite himself. "Not bad," he purred. "Kneel, and I might spare you." He moved like a storm, and then his form chopped and multiplied. 9 Lokis filled the crater edge, all armed and all attacking. They were no mere illusions. They struck and were struck. Noah danced back, parried with wind shields, and countered. A burst of lightning from the electrocution blade lanced out and struck one Loki, unmaking him in a stuttering shower of sparks. Loki's temper flared. He split again into 13 forms, then 9, then more, an army of mock Lokis pressing in. Noah's hands blurred. He formed a guardian barrier at his side, the air around him snapping with the power of a resolve rune, and he rode the winds he made into a spiraling counterattack. The clones were blown apart, scattering like leaves. Only the true Loki remained, standing where he had first been. He clapped slowly. "For a mortal, you are adequate," he said, the compliment a cut. "For a god." Noah's fingers closed on a hand that reached around his shoulder. Loki's face twisted as the illusion of omniscience slipped. Noah had never failed to see him. He had known where Loki was the whole time. The god of mischief strained against the grip and could not free himself. "You dare," Loki hissed. Noah pulled the electrocution blade skyward. Dark clouds coalesced, answering his call. Lightning gathered in the blade and threaded itself through the air. Loki felt the change like an animal smells a trap. Every hair on his body prickled as if the sky were coming down on him. "Damn you," he spat. He tried everything, strength born of frost giant blood, telekinesis flaring from his fingers, but he couldn't wrench himself free. When the lightning began to fall, he roared a single name, Heimdall. Far above, at the edge of Asgard, Heimdall had been watching. He had been tracking Thor's movement, and then had seen Loki slip across the realms. Heimdall did not hesitate. He opened the Bifrost. A column of 7 bright colors stabbed through the clouds and struck where Loki stood. Noah felt the raw power as it descended. He let go of Loki and vanished in a blink, arcane shift, just as the Bifrost's beam flooded the crater. Coulson and the agents, arriving moments too late for the fight, only saw the fading glow of the rainbow light and the imprint it left on the mud. Thor and Jane, hearing the commotion, came out of the compound and stared at the place where Loki had been, at the place where the Bifrost had touched Earth. The air still hummed with an aftertaste of power and an unanswered question. Who else would come through that light? Chapter 42, Noah's Reminder, Thor's Change. The dazzling column of multicolored light winked out, leaving a strange scorch on the muddy ground. People drifted forward, staring, first at the mark, then at Noah, who stood frozen with lightning crackling in his hand. The scene was equal parts beautiful and unnerving. "What was that?" Dr. Jane asked. She'd seen the flicker of electric light from her window and come out with Thor to investigate. They stepped into the chill night and saw the remnant of the Bifrost before them, something gorgeous and utterly beyond her science. "That's the Bifrost Bridge, Jane. The one I told you about," Thor said, eyes fixed on the strange imprint. The bridge was the way home. The sight tightened something in him. For all the magic and myth, he knew in his bones he could not return that way now. Noah, holding the electrocution blade, felt its power resonate with him. Like Mjolnir, it was a weapon of lightning. Its form shouted its element. Thor's gaze drifted from the mark to the weapon in Noah's hand, intrigued. "That was the Bifrost?" Thor repeated, astonished. "Everything you said before was real?" "Of course it's real. Why would I lie?" Noah replied easily. Agent Coulson, who'd been watching from a short distance, walked over, eyes flicking from Thor to the mark to Noah's weapon. "Noah, what happened? Were you fighting someone?" Noah slid the electrocution blade back into his backpack and looked at Thor. "Did your brother come looking for you?" Thor nodded. "Loki came to see me." Coulson stiffened. "He came into our base without us knowing?" Noah explained that Loki could turn invisible, which was why sensors and watchers hadn't noticed him. Coulson's surprised frown softened into a wary understanding. An invisible intruder made the breach possible. He fired a rapid volley of questions about injuries and damage, eyes sweeping the torn fence and the crater of the meteorite. The boom of thunder and electric flash made it obvious something violent had happened. "Noah, why did you clash?" Coulson pressed. "We ran into each other," Noah said with a neutral expression. "We had a friendly spar to foster interrealm relations." Coulson didn't look convinced. Thor did. "Noah, you're a good man. Maybe you and my brother will really be friends." Noah bit back an amused thought. Loki hated him, but let it go. Coulson ordered his team to secure the site and tidy up. With the immediate crisis handled, Noah and Thor went back inside. Sitting across from Thor, Noah asked, "You still can't lift your hammer?" Thor lowered his head, the memory stinging. "I was arrogant. I started a war, hurt people, disturbed the peace of the Nine Realms. Father banished me to Midgard. I am no longer the prince I once was, and I caused my father's death." Jane reached for Thor's hand, offering quiet comfort, while Noah watched him with a calculating expression. He had watched this story before, the proud god sent to learn humility, and he smelled gaps in Thor's version. "The news of your father's death? Loki told you that, didn't he?" Noah asked. Thor looked up, puzzled. "How did you know? Don't you have any doubts? Loki is the god of mischief. He lies. I suspect your father is not dead, but in Odin's sleep." "Odin's sleep?" Thor's brow furrowed. "I've never heard of that." Noah tread carefully. He couldn't reveal everything. Too many ears, too many dangers, but he sketched a plausible picture. It is said Odin's power grows over time. To balance it, he periodically goes into a deep Odin sleep. Thor's face, which had been clouded with grief, brightened immediately. The thought that Odin might still live brought a rush of hope. Jane shared his relief. Noah allowed their joy, but he cooled it. "Don't celebrate yet," Noah said. "You still can't lift Mjolnir. Your father clearly isn't satisfied. He sent you to learn. Spend some time on Earth. Live among mortals. I see you and this friend of yours have a bond already." Jane looked surprised when Noah mentioned her, and Thor smiled at her with gratitude. They had barely begun to talk when Coulson called from the doorway. "Noah, friends of Mr. Thor and Miss Jane have arrived." At the name, Jane's face lit up. She'd left a message for Eric when Thor went for his hammer, worried something might happen. Eric had come. He arrived taut with worry, scolding Jane for visiting S.H.I.E.L.D. without telling him. Despite his misgivings about Coulson's agency, he kept his confrontational questions to himself and sought to secure Jane and Thor's release. Coulson, reading the scene, decided not to detain them. "We won't prevent Miss Jane and Mr. Thor from leaving," he said. He also offered to return the devices S.H.I.E.L.D. had collected, items Jane valued highly. Relief washed over Jane. Eric, surprised but grateful, decided not to press the issue. Before leaving, Thor stepped forward. "Wizard, I didn't catch your name." "Noah," Noah said. "Thank you for reminding me. You have my gratitude." They left under watchful eyes. Noah and Coulson watched them go. Eric took Thor aside for a drink, wanting to keep him from Jane for the night. A few beers later, Thor carried a very drunk Eric back to their temporary lodgings. Jane opened the door to find the two of them and for a moment thought Thor had beaten him. Then she realized Eric was merely incapacitated by alcohol. With a tired smile, she helped Thor lay Eric on his bed. When the room quieted, Jane turned to Thor. She brimmed with questions about magic, the Bifrost Asgard, but felt shy. Thor seemed to sense it and spoke first. "Jane, thank you for staying with me tonight. Let us go outside so we do not disturb Eric." They sat by a small campfire and talk spilled easily into the night. Thor told her stories of Asgard and the Nine Realms, answering her questions until the stars felt her like distant lanterns. The longer he spoke, the more he realized he liked being among mortals. The feeling surprised him. Being a man on Earth with a friend like Jane was not so terrible. Back at the meteorite crater, Coulson turned to Noah. "Were you hurt when you confronted Loki?" Noah, unruffled and with clothes largely intact, shook his head. "I'm fine." He then gave Coulson a concise account of the encounter, Loki's appearance, the skirmish, Thor's involvement, and the two men set about logging the incident and the damage. The night settled around them, but the threads Noah had set in motion. The reminder about Odin, the warning to Thor, and the strange new alliances would tug at both realms in the days to come. Chapter 43. Talking about Asgard, the power of runes is strengthened. "So Loki is fighting Thor over the throne of Asgard?" Coulson asked, incredulous. "Isn't that the stuff of ancient epics? I didn't expect Asgard to do this." Coulson and Noah were in a secure conference room, Barton leaning against the wall. "Something like that," Noah said. "But Thor can't access his divine power right now for some reason." "So what really happened between you and Loki back then? The whole sparring line was for Thor's benefit, wasn't it?" Coulson pressed. Noah sighed. "You pretty much figured it out. The truth is mundane. Thor tried to pull Mjolnir and couldn't. I made fun of him. He got angry, tried to fight me, couldn't win, and left. That's the whole story." Coulson rubbed his forehead at a loss for words. Noah's bluntness was almost comically frank, the kind of answer that felt like, "What are you staring at?" Still, Coulson could infer something useful. Loki was arrogant and hot-headed. Barton chimed in. "What about that beam of light? Do you know what that was, Noah?" Coulson looked up. He'd been curious whether Noah had an explanation. After the beam dissipated, a strange glyph had been left at the site. S-Yield researchers had run every analysis they could, but all they'd concluded was that it was an unknown script. "That was the Bifrost," Noah said, "a kind of transport device built by the Asgardians. They use it to travel between the 9 realms." The Bifrost, Noah explained, wasn't just teleportation tech. It could be used as an immensely powerful energy weapon. Sustained, it could even devastate a world like Jotunheim, home of the Frost Giants. "So Asgardian tech is that advanced? Or is the Bifrost magic?" Coulson asked. He wanted a clearer picture. Noah's description didn't match Coulson's mental image of a medieval mythic Asgard. "No, Asgard's tech is highly advanced. It's like tech fused with magic," Noah said. "Think of it as technology built on top of sorcery." At the thought of magic-tech hybrids, Noah's mind flicked to Hextech, another blend of arcane and engineering. "Some of what I know I picked up from the future," he added impulsively, "and from Valoran's database." He smiled sheepishly. When in doubt, he made things up. Noah went on. "Asgardians were extraordinarily long-lived. Thor was roughly 1,500 years old, and Loki had claimed their people could live up to 5,000, or maybe he'd been talking about frost giants. Noah wasn't sure. "Are they gods?" Coulson asked. "To be able to live that long?" "You can think of them as powerful extraterrestrials," Noah said. "Physically superior and long-lived, but otherwise similar to humans. Some, though, are said to go to Valhalla after death, which implies some form of return from death." The Thor films' portrayal ran the gamut between powerful aliens and ancient gods. To Noah, the nuance didn't matter, but Coulson made a mental note to pass everything on to Nick Fury. Noah left the room. Coulson and Barton exchanged observations about the Asgardian presence and then called Fury to report. "Aliens? Gods?" Fury said when Coulson summarized. The revelation that a powerful alien force was so close to Earth unsettled him. Though Asgard was physically distant, its technology, the Bifrost, allowed it to cross the cosmos and make sudden appearances on Earth. Fury's mind went straight to contingency planning. "You said Loki's in line for the throne?" Fury asked. Noah hadn't told Coulson that Loki had temporarily a kingship, so for Fury and Coulson worked from the same incomplete picture. Thor had been exiled, so Loki's chances were higher. "What do you make of Thor?" Fury asked. Coulson answered carefully. "He's straightforward and pretty, sincere. He has a close relationship with a woman named Jane. She was the first person he met after he came to Earth." "Fell in love with a human?" Fury muttered. "It could be useful, a settlement, a bridge, if it became one." Fury sat with the flood of new information. A technologically and magically advanced force near Earth, frost giants rumored to have visited, and other elements of Norse myth that might be real. He stroked the pager in his hand, his secret trump card, but decided it wasn't time to play it yet. Fury's bigger plan was already forming, the Avengers Initiative. Noah had told him Captain America was still alive, and Fury had agents searching. If he could find Cap and recruit the likes of Iron Man and possibly Noah, Fury thought his plan was taking shape. He tapped his fingers on the desk, then made up his mind. He would go there in person tomorrow, and he would bring someone with him. "What? Nick? Are you awake? You sound like your circuit's fried. Thor? Odin? What are you babbling about?" Tony snapped into the phone, bewildered. Fury had called and launched straight into Norse gods, Mjolnir, and a meteorite in New Mexico. Fury hung up after briefing him, brief, earnest, insistent. Tony sat back in his chair, rubbing his chin. A genius engineer doesn't believe in gods on faith. But when he pulled up the footage Fury had mentioned, a meteorite crater outside a small town, crowds gathered, cars and tractors trying to move a hammer embedded in rock, something in him shifted. He'd had Jarvis verify. The videos weren't faked. What in the world, Tony thought. If Fury's right, this could be big. But why drag me in? Research or cleanup? Whatever the reason, Tony knew he'd see for himself tomorrow. He glanced at his Mark VI armor. He hadn't built a new suit recently, but he'd upgraded what he had. With a redesigned arc reactor, the armor had more power and punch than before. Moonlight washed over the desert like a thin veil. The recent rain had left moisture in the air and made the cold bite deeper. A few hundred meters from the S-Shield temporary camp at the crater, Noah sat on a boulder, wrapped in green light. The resolve rune hovered before him, humming with life. There were too many people at the camp for him to cultivate properly, so Noah had slipped out to a sparsely populated stretch of sand. He inhaled slowly, exhaling evenly, channeling energy through his body. A new intimacy was forming between him and the rune. "I can feel it more clearly," he murmured. He stopped and stared at the floating glyph. His command of the resolve rune had taken another step forward. Previously, he'd improved control by summoning heroes and testing boundaries. This time, he was deepening the rune's connection to himself through meditation. It felt right, a foundation for mastery. The rune's life magic seeped into the earth beneath him. Tiny green points of light dotting the sand drew closer. Then, when Noah looked, they resolved into tender shoots breaking through the soil. Life spread outward from him, a quiet bloom coaxed into being by the resolve rune's power. Legends said the rune's life force could even pull a person back from death. For now, it coaxed life from barren ground. Back at the camp, an agent glanced at the detector readout. "Sir, there's a high-energy signature nearby." "Don't worry about it," Coulson answered, already recognizing the pattern. He knew Noah had gone out to practice. "All right, sir." The agent eased off, but kept his eyes on the screen. The energy signature's radius seemed to be expanding. For a moment, he wondered if it was his imagination, but the sweep kept growing. The next morning, Noah let out a long breath as the magic around him faded. He packed away his runes and ended the all-night practice. Phew, feels good to get stronger every day. He could feel the magic still humming in his body, and it put him in a good mood. Getting stronger every day was an invigorating feeling. When he opened his eyes, he saw that the barren desert surrounding the great stone where he'd been sitting was no longer lifeless. A patch of green grass had sprung up around the stone, like a tiny oasis. He frowned and guessed aloud, "The resolve rune? The rune's magic must have leaked out while I was cultivating. The life energy made the desert grow." He remembered Rise's comic notes about green runes having the power to revive the dead. Those must be the resolve runes. "I'll try that sometime," Noah thought, half to himself. Clearing his mind, he glanced one last time at the green patch and headed back to the S-Shield camp. Outside the camp, Coulson and a handful of agents had already cleared a large space. Noah walked up to them. "Coulson, what's going on? Why the early activity?" he asked. Coulson looked up as Noah approached. "We're waiting for the director. He said he'd come personally, should be here any minute." A black speck appeared on the horizon and drew nearer. Everyone watched, expecting Director Fury, but the newcomer was someone else, Iron Man. The Quinjet in the distance deactivated its optical stealth and descended, landing in the cleared space with a smooth touchdown. Tony Stark stepped out of his suit in the familiar superhero deceleration landing style. The rear hatch lowered, and Nick Fury and Black Widow climbed out. Fury, as always, walked with a purpose. "Coulson," Tony called, grinning. "Long time." "You mean a few days ago in your lab," Coulson replied dryly. Before Tony could continue his chatter, Fury cut him off. "Coulson, take us to see it." He glanced at Noah and gave a curt nod. Noah nodded back. Why was Fury here? Noah guessed Coulson had briefed him about the situation yesterday. Fury had a tendency to get involved in anything that smelled of the otherworldly. Tony noticed the exchange and, curious about Noah, quietly told Jarvis to pull up any available info. His voice was low, but Noah heard it and ignored it. They walked over to the meteorite crater and saw the hammer standing lodged in the stone. Tony and Fury both had serious looks, but the expressions were different. Tony's face held eager curiosity. He'd never seen anything like it, and scientists are driven by curiosity, while Fury's expression was heavier. The emergence of Asgard as a new power worried him. "That Thor's hammer?" Tony asked, stepping closer. His faceplate had closed again. "Jarvis, scan the hammer." Jarvis ran a diagnostic but found no technological signature. On the outside, it looked like a normal hammer. That made Tony frown. Then he reached out and gripped the handle. He tried to lift it. Nothing. He increased the suit's output, extending jet nozzles from his gauntlets and thrusting backward to maximize force, even making his feet dig grooves in the sand. The hammer didn't budge. "This is ridiculous," Tony said, incredulous. "How can this thing be immovable? And if it's that heavy, what's that small mound underneath it supporting?" "No one else can lift it because it's Mjolnir," Noah answered calmly. "Only those deemed worthy can lift it." Tony turned and noticed Noah properly for the first time. He cocked an eyebrow. "So Esild hires child labor now? You're only 16. Shouldn't you be in high school?" Jarvis had already pulled up a basic record. Noah Lee, 16, Mid-City High. Tony didn't know why Noah was there, but he didn't like the idea of a teenager in the field. "Noah's our security consultant," Fury said, crossing his arms. "He's very capable." Before Tony could retort, a 7-colored beam of light shot down and struck the town, a Bifrost. Coulson's face registered recognition. "The Bifrost. More Asgardians." "Bifrost? I want to check it out," Tony said. Curiosity won out. He blasted off toward the town. Fury sighed, barked orders, and rounded up Coulson, Hawkeye, Black Widow, and a few agents to board the Quinjet. He asked Noah if he wanted a ride. Noah shook his head. He tapped his belt, and armor snapped out to cover his body. He took off under his own power as the Quinjet lifted. Fury watched him go and shook his head. Armored kids. On board the Quinjet, Coulson keyed the comm to an agent stationed in town. "Any unusual people down there?" The reply came back with a chuckle. "Yes, sir. We've got a warrior princess, Jackie Chan, and Robin Hood walking around. Is the town hosting a Renaissance fair?" "Keep an eye on them," Coulson said. The warriors three, Fandral, Hogan, and Volstagg, and Sif had already arrived and were strolling through town in their Asgardian garb. Their strange clothing drew gawks and startled stares from the locals. Back in Jane Foster's house, Thor was moving through the living room with plates of food, handing them out. After a long, sincere conversation with Jane by the campfire the night before, Thor seemed different, more composed, less bluster. Eric Selvig stumbled in holding his head and collapsed into a chair. He'd lost a drinking contest to Thor the night before and slept off the hangover. His head still hurt. Thor placed a plate in front of him with an easy smile. Eric accepted it and thanked him. Having spent the evening talking with Thor, Eric's opinion of the Asgardian was softened. The idea of sending him away no longer crossed his mind. After they'd eaten, Jane tried to explain some of the Asgardian concepts Thor had shared. Eric waved a hand skeptically. "Good luck convincing the scientific community of any of that," he said. Before Jane could fire back, there was a knock at the door. Thor looked, and a grin broke over his face. His 4 friends from Asgard were standing there. He moved forward, surprised and delighted to see them. At the Bifrost Bridge fortress in Asgard, Heimdall stood his eternal watch. The Guardian's legendary eyes could pierce the 9 realms. Nothing that threatened Asgard escaped his sight. Standing at the fortress exit, he watched Loki stride across the Bifrost toward him, the king's eternal spear in hand, and his expression unreadable. Heimdall's voice was low, accusing before Loki could speak. "Tell me, Loki, how did you bring frost giants into Asgard?" Heimdall had rescued Loki from Noah's custody once, and sensed then that something was wrong. When he had questioned Loki, the prince deflected. Loki's new status as king made it dangerous to press matters openly, so Heimdall had investigated in secret. What he'd found was damning. Loki had guided frost giants into Asgard and knew hidden passages that bypassed the Bifrost entirely. He had been trying to hide that knowledge from everyone, until now. Loki dropped the pretense. "Do you think the Bifrost is the only way in and out of the realm? Some things, Heimdall, are beyond even your sight. As king, I declare you no longer a citizen of Asgard for your treason." "Then I will no longer obey you," Heimdall replied, drawing his sword. Before he could strike, a chilling wind rushed over him. Loki had produced the casket of ancient winters. Heimdall felt the chill seize him. Loki's skin shifted to the blue of a frost giant, and his pupils flashed red. In moments, Heimdall's sword fell from numb fingers. Loki concealed the casket with a practiced sleight, then stalked back toward the throne. He had already used the Eternal Spear once that day, to send their father's armor, the Destroyer, to Earth. He had given it explicit orders. He did not want Thor to return to Asgard. He wanted Thor dead on Midgard. On Earth, in the small town, 4 friends stood peering through a cracked glass doorway. The Asgardians had left their mark, an obvious breach where the 4 had forced entry, and Thor blinked in surprise at the sight of familiar faces. Jane, Eric, Daisy, and Agent Coulson's associates stared at the assembled visitors, stunned. Eric, who had insisted they needed evidence to convince anyone of Jane's theories, couldn't believe how quickly that evidence had appeared. The Asgardians pushed the door open and entered. Thor, relieved and ecstatic, threw his arms wide and hugged his friends. Behind him, the outwardly jolly Volstagg moved to introduce their group. "Greetings," he boomed. "This is Lady Sif, and we are the 3 warriors." Eric shot Jane a sideways look, and she returned a triumphant smile. Proof at last. Thor's face grew solemn. "My friends, please tell me first, did my father die?" "No," Sif answered quickly. "Odin still lives, but he is indisposed. Loki is ruling temporarily. Even so, we believe Loki is hiding something. He betrayed us. He reported our trip to Jotunheim." Hearing that, Thor's tension eased, then hardened with anger. Loki had lied to him. From the sky, a red and gold streak descended. Tony Stark had detected the Bifrost signature Sif, and the warriors left when they entered the town. He'd flown in, scanned the streets, and had no trouble locating the group sheltering in a house at the town intersection. Several figures in medieval armor gathered with 4 mortals. As Tony dropped down, passers-by stared and then shouted, "Iron Man in town." Everyone came running. Phones came out. Someone screamed for a photo. Daisy squealed and grabbed Jane's arm like an excited fan. Thor tilted his head at the commotion. "Who is that? He seems popular." "Tony Stark," Jane said. "He's a genius, a kind of hero people admire." Tony landed, gave an exaggerated wave to the crowd, and called out, "Hello, everyone. Great to be appreciated, but don't mob the place, please." Then, ignoring the applause, he strode toward the house. "He's coming this way," Eric murmured. Tony stopped at their doorway and opened his helmet's HUD to scan. "Hello, are you Asgardians?" Volstagg puffed up with pride and launched into introductions. "Yes, Earthling. This is Prince Thor of Asgard, Lady Sif, and we are Fandral, Hogun, and Volstagg, the 3 warriors." Before anyone could ask Tony why he'd come, another murmur rose from the crowd. Eyes turned skyward. "Look, up there!" A second armored figure appeared, cutting through the late afternoon light. People began clambering for better views. Tony looked up and saw the young man he'd glimpsed before, the one from the camp. He'd been told the kid was the child of S.H.I.E.L.'s security consultant, but Tony had been dismissive of the tag until now. The newcomer touched down beside Tony. Nick Fury's team had landed their Quinjet outside town and moved in under stealth. The young man, Noah, kept his armor composed but alert. Tony peered at him from beneath his visor. "Who are you?" he asked. Noah's voice was casual. "You saw me already, Mr. Stark, the kid at the camp." Recognition snapped into Tony. He'd seen footage of the boy's sudden appearance the night before last. Tense, capable, mysterious. "Right, the kid. Your suit's impressive." Noah nodded once. Thor listened to the exchange and gave the newcomer a curious glance. Then the sky itself changed. A roiling column of clouds spun above the town, and a sound like thunder on metal rolled across the rooftops. Thor's eyes widened. He knew that sound. The Bifrost. "Volstagg, did anyone else arrive?" he asked, tense. Volstagg scanned and shook his head. "No, the 4 of us only." But Noah's face had gone hard. He had readied himself the moment the sky churned. He knew what the heavy metallic presence meant. "That's the destroyer," he said quietly. Far off, something enormous hit down with a thud that vibrated through the street. The war Loki had set in motion, sent by his hand from Asgard to Midgard, had just come to Earth. "Who is that?" Tony had Jarvis zoom the feed. A tall, armored figure was descending from the Bifrost, massive, muscular, all in shimmering metal. "The destroyer? Loki actually sent it down!" Volstagg shouted from across the field when he recognized the silhouette. "That armor is said to be what King Odin wore in his conquests," Hogun said calmly, his dark ponytail whipping as he spoke. The destroyer landed with ponderous, deliberate steps and began to advance inch by inch toward the town. "We really have to fight that thing, don't we?" Fandral asked, watching the imposing figure. The armor itself was awe-inspiring. Knowing it had once belonged to Odin made being its enemy feel like madness. A ripple ran through the crowd. Agents in black suits pushed forward, Nick Fury at their head, followed by Phil Coulson, Clint Barton, Natasha Romanoff, and several others. What's going on? Who's the new arrival? Fury asked Tony and Noah after a quick assessment. He'd just arrived and hadn't seen Thor's earlier confrontation. He could tell, though, that the people who had come through the Bifrost with Thor were on their side. The newcomer clearly wasn't. "Don't ask me. I don't know anything," Tony said with a shrug. Asgardian politics were beyond him. The suit had told him nothing more than big metal guy. "Noah, evacuate the civilians first. That's our priority," Fury told Noah. These townspeople were packed together. If the destroyer fired a beam, the damage could be catastrophic. Fury raised his one exposed eyebrow and barked orders. The S-healed agents began shepherding people away. The townsfolk, sensing danger, started to flee with family and neighbors in tow. Thor watched them go and turned to Jane. "Jane, you should get out of here." "What about you?" she asked, worried. He wasn't moving to leave. "Thor stays, of course." Volstagg called out from the side. Thor walked over to his 4 Asgardian companions and said quietly, "I'm immortal now. If I fight, I might get you drawn in. I can stay and help with the evacuation." "If you're staying, then I'm staying too," Jane said immediately. Tony snorted, unable to stand it. "Okay, you guys can do your 8 o'clock soap opera. I'm gonna go meet that fellow up close." He rocketed up toward the destroyer, who was almost at the edge of town. "What's a soap opera?" Thor asked, baffled, then went back to helping shepherd people to safety. The Asgardian 4 and Sif exchanged looks and began to form up toward the destroyer. Noah hung back. He wanted to watch a moment. This scene was different from the movie. Iron Man and Fury weren't present then, so tactics might change. Tony hovered before the silver colossus and tried to talk it down. "Big guy, turn around, head back to Asgard, or don't blame me for being impolite." He kept his thrusters steady. The destroyer stopped, turned its head, and the faceplate began to open. Tony grinned. His bluff had worked, until Jarvis's calm voice cut through his chest display, a little sharp. "Sir, something's wrong. High energy reading ahead." "What?" Tony said. His grin dropped. The opened faceplate was hollow, unmanned. Then the face inside began to glow. Tony's thrusters changed direction on reflex. A searing beam of light lanced past him. He wiped sweat off his brow. If that had hit him full on, he would have been in trouble. "Shit, you bastard!" he yelled and fired. His shoulder panels split open and spat a dozen mini rockets that streaked across the sky and struck the destroyer with a series of explosions. White smoke shrouded the armor. The HUD pulsed red and a second laser slashed out of the mist. Tony barely dodged. "Midgardian, I will assist you," bellowed Volstagg as he charged, axe raised. He swung with all his braggadocio. The metal clang reverberated as the destroyer blocked the blow. Volstagg's arm felt numb from the impact, and the armor was unmarked. The destroyer backhanded him across the ground. Hogan and Fandral managed to catch him as they were shoved back several meters. A laser streaked from the sky into the destroyer's side and forced it to step back. Tony descended to the street, firing palm repulsors from both hands and squeezing every missile launcher he had. The barrage forced the armored giant back. Seeing Tony engaging, the 4 Asgardians advanced, striking with spear and sword. The destroyer was nearly indestructible, but coordinated attacks pushed it slowly back. Every time it fired, Tony clobbered the head with his repulsors, veering the beam into houses and cars, creating secondary explosions. For the first time, Tony and the Asgardians displayed an odd sort of sync. "Director, should we move in?" Hawkeye asked, watching from a short distance. "We didn't bring the big toys for this run. Sending in jets could cause more civilian harm," Fury replied. "Also, Noah hasn't made his move yet. He'll do something when he's ready." Natasha spoke up. "I can take a Quinjet in. Fighter jets have a long range. One ill-aimed shot and civilians suffer. We'll wait." The destroyer retreated under a house. Suddenly, Sif dropped down from a rooftop. Her spear drove into the armor's chest with the force of the descent. An Asgardian Master Smith's spear, razor-sharp, plunged clean through the metal. Sif smiled. Then the destroyer twisted. The body turned to face her, the head blazing with light. Sif couldn't move in time. A beam began to form. A lightning bolt struck the destroyer's head, interrupting the firing. "Thor?" Sif and the Asgardians shouted, turning to see who had arrived, expecting Mjolnir. Instead, a figure in high-tech battle armor stood there, wielding a thunderbolt-shaped weapon that had just fired. It was Noah. Thor, still helping the last group of townspeople, saw the flash and felt a pang of longing for his hammer, but he had people to get out first. Jane, go with the others, he told her once the civilians were clear. I want to stay, Jane said. My friends are still fighting, and behind that armor is Loki. I want to know if I can stop him. Then I'll wait here for you, Thor said. Back in the fray, Noah stepped up. He knocked the destroyer's head askew with his electrocution blade, and then propelled himself into the center of the fighting. Finally, Tony muttered. I thought you were just watching with popcorn. No rush, Noah replied dryly. I thought you guys were handling it pretty well. Sif had already pulled her spear free and fallen back. The hole in the destroyer's chest had sealed itself. It was repairing. The suit showed no emotion. There was only metal and the hand that moved it. Loki, hidden behind the armor, recognized Noah's voice and snapped. The memory of being humiliated earlier flared hot. He screamed orders into the destroyer to eliminate Noah first. The armor's head glowed, charging with far greater energy than before. Noah stopped the Asgardians from charging and braced. He planted a hand, gathered power, and a whining roar filled the air as he and the destroyer simultaneously discharged massive beams. The two streams collided in midair with a cataclysmic explosion. The shockwaves slammed into nearby houses. Several collapsed instantly, and debris rained outward. For a heartbeat, everyone reeled from the blast, and then came a sharp, panicked gasp from behind them. Thor! Jane screamed. Thor! Jane's cry cut through the clash of metal and energy. Noah and the destroyer's beams collided and detonated. Debris sprayed outward. Most of the Asgardians and Tony weren't fazed by flying rubble, but there were civilians. Daisy and Eric ducked behind a car and were lucky. The vehicle took much of the blast. Jane wasn't so fortunate. A jagged chunk of masonry hurtled toward her. She couldn't get out of the way in time. Thor, standing beside her, shoved her clear and took the full impact himself. He was stripped by debris, thrown to the ground, chest torn through, blood spreading across his tunic. He lay still. Jane crawled to him and sat frozen, staring at his unmoving face. Noah felt his stomach drop. He had wanted a spectacular confrontation, but he had underestimated bystanders. He'd meant to look heroic, not get people killed. Thor! The four Asgardians, Fandral, Volstagg, Hogun, and Sif, poured forward, abandoning their positions without thought. The destroyer paused as well. Loki, the manipulative force inside it, halted whatever control he'd been exerting. Watching his brother appear dead, Loki's expression shifted into something more complicated than triumph. He clenched his jaw. It wasn't the elation he'd expected. A roll of thunder split the sky. Tony glanced up. Jarvis, was a storm forecast? Sir, the meteorological models show no precipitation. The atmospheric disturbance is highly anomalous. Noah's eyes lit. Mjolnir, left at a distant scientific camp, began to vibrate and pulse. Scientists nearby watched instruments spike in alarm. Then the hammer lifted clean off the table, streaked free with a sonic boom, and rocketed toward the town. Lightning began to blossom in its wake. Daisy grabbed Jane and dragged her behind cover as the hammer descended. The Asgardians froze, faces turning to rapture. Mjolnir crashed down near Thor. A bolt struck through the crisp air. Wrapped in the lightning, an arm rose and caught the hammer. Pieces of armor spun into place around the figure. Thor's battle gear assembled on his body. He stood up, alive. Everyone around them gaped. Jane, Tony, Nick Fury's team. Barton offered a short nod. If that was a god, it explained a great deal. Noah let his breath out. Thor being back meant he might not have to finish this fight himself, but it also raised the problem he hated most: timing. If Thor delivered the killing blow, Noah worried whether his own mission would count. Far away in Asgard, Loki watched. He clenched his fists and left the throne with an air of cold calculation. Whatever games he'd planned, bringing Laufey to Asgard, proving himself greater than Thor, were suddenly more complicated. Thor, restored and towering, strode onto the battlefield. He flashed a brief, wry look at Jane as he passed. More or less the usual, he told her when she stammered a question. But there are enemies to deal with. You all should move somewhere safer. He lobbed Mjolnir at the destroyer. The hammer struck the heavy armor and staggered the construct. It was caught, however, and swung back. The destroyer fired an orange-hot beam from its head. The high-heat laser slammed toward Thor. He tossed Mjolnir up, the hammer intercepting the beam, and rode it into the air as storm clouds gathered, coalescing into a churning vortex. Tony watched, half amused and half unnerved. "Isn't this a bit much?" he muttered. Noah, eyes narrowed, felt his pulse quicken. That storm move looked like Thor's big finish. If he waited, the kill would be taken. Noah shifted the electrocution blade in his hand into its sword form, planted his right foot, and shot forward like an arrow. Wind and thunder wrapped around him. The power of his wind technique amplified the blade. He appeared before the destroyer and hauled the sword down. The strike ripped through the construct's chest and forced it backward. High above, Thor dove down amid a halo of lightning, Mjolnir poised to obliterate the enemy. Noah pushed forward, rune power flared inside him. Wind and lightning streamed from his body, tearing at the battlefield and fanning into a cyclone around him. The air itself screamed. He shouted and swung. A tornado of blade energy, crackling with electricity, rose up and carried the destroyer into the sky. The revolving, razor edge torn apart the construct's armor, lightning and wind shredding its joints. Mjolnir hit with perfect timing. Only the destroyer's leg was struck, and Thor's hammer shattered its lower half into scattered fragments. That break was exactly what Noah had aimed to create. Noah channeled deeper. The runes within him glowed hot. He vaulted up, closing beside the tumbling destroyer. "Last breath," he intoned, voice steady, and the electrocution blade expanded, lightning forming a 5-meter-long greatsword between his hands. He brought it down. The blade's arc sliced through the destroyer. Cracks spread along the supposedly invulnerable alloy. Noah followed with a storm of slashes. Wind and lightning combined to keep the construct pinned. For the finale, he concentrated everything he had. Searing currents of magic and electricity converged at the sword's edge. "Sorye Gaitan!" he shouted. The final strike drove the energy down into the destroyer and into the earth. The blow carved a gash across the ground, dozens of meters long, and left the destroyer a shattered husk in the middle of a smoking fissure. Its core sputtered, then fell silent. A stunned hush followed. Civilians stood open-mouthed. The soldiers, Fury included, looked as if they'd seen a miracle. Even the 4 Asgardians stared in surprised admiration. Thor descended beside Noah, smiling. "I did not expect your swordsmanship to be so impressive, wizard." Noah sheathed the blade and let himself relax for a fraction. "You were excellent yourself. Regaining your power must feel great." Jane moved forward, cheeks still pale, and offered a weak, excited laugh. "Thor, do you want to see that bridge you told me about?" They bantered as if nothing monumental had just occurred. Noah took a step back, opening his mission panel out of habit. Usually he checked the details properly back at home, but he'd been curious all day. He'd accepted this job yesterday and had been eager for today's action. Normally the mission updates promptly after completion, so he pulled it up to confirm. The panel blinked to life. He frowned. The mission he'd accepted yesterday still showed as incomplete. Noah's eyes darted back to the destroyer's broken frame. It lay dead. Had the mission failed? He was about to scroll through the logs when the screen flickered and a strange pulse ran down his arm. The same rune light he'd just used, but malformed, like a ripple. Something was wrong. Chapter 48. Is this Odin the Destroyer possessed? The rift torn open by Noah's sword chi trembled, and something within the destroyer's remains began to stir. Noah frowned. His task wasn't finished yet, and turned to the rift. "What is it, wizard?" Thor asked, following his gaze. Before Noah could answer, Thor felt Mjolnir surge forward of its own accord. He yanked it back, his feet dragging across the ground. A golden light flared across the hammer's surface, burst outward, and shot toward the spot where the destroyer had fallen. The light dissipated, and the hammer returned to normal. Thor rubbed the handle, bewildered. "What was that? How did that come out of my hammer?" Noah ignored him. A tremendous force was radiating from the rift, the place where he had struck down the destroyer. This pressure felt far stronger than the destroyer's previous aura. Remembering the light that had issued from Thor's hammer, Noah's mind jumped to one possibility: Odin's power. He recalled his first day here, when he'd used rune power and briefly clashed with the Odin force contained in Mjolnir. Why would Odin's power flare up now? Was the old god somehow stirring things behind the scenes? Or worse, was he sleepwalking into battle? "Thor, something's wrong. Get Jane and the others away. Nick Fury and his agents too. Move them far from here." Noah could not risk leaving civilians nearby. The aura coming from the destroyer was unusual, and whatever happened next would produce massive fluctuations. Iron Man could fly himself out, and the Asgardian Four were fit enough to take care of themselves, but the non-combatants had to be removed. "What's going on?" Thor began, but the golden light suddenly shot up from where the destroyer had fallen, a column of majestic, oppressive radiance. It became a focal point, whipping the air into waves that radiated outward. The crowd shielded their faces against the sand and debris whipped up by the blast. Even so, gust after gust made them stagger. Noah raised his voice and had Lysandra amplify it so everyone could hear over the gale. "Get away from here. Now! The enemy isn't dead. It's going to get dangerous." Nick Fury didn't question Noah. He'd felt the same change in the air and barked orders to his agents to take Jane and the civilians and leave immediately. "Jane, I'll come for you later," he called. Thor waved at Jane, and she nodded. Noah took a deep breath, fished a mana potion from his pack, pushed his armor mask up, and drank. If this fight was going to escalate, he wanted to be at full strength. "Mr. Stark, aren't you leaving?" "I can't protect you if you stay here," Noah said, surprised Tony hadn't already flown out. "Little Noah, focus on the enemy in front of you," Tony replied. "My firepower may not match yours right now, but I've got tricks too. Iron Man doesn't flee." Thor, always blunt and boisterous, added with a grin, "You're Iron Man, yes? I am Thor. I like brave warriors. Consider yourself my friend." Noah blinked at being called little friend. He was only 16 in this life, so the address wasn't insulting, just awkward. As everyone braced themselves, the destroyer finally stepped out of the light. Its form had changed. Gone was the 9-meter colossus. The armor had shrunk to roughly 2 meters, closer to Thor's height, but the presence it radiated was far more oppressive. Thor's face went pale. "Father?" he breathed. The armor's posture, the bearing, it echoed the form Odin himself had taken when wearing this suit in his youth. Jarvis warned Tony in panicked tones about an unknown high-energy reaction and urged evacuation. Even the Asgardian Four swallowed hard. Lysandra, unusually grave, told Noah the destroyer's energy signature had ballooned to an enormous scale. Thor's senses went on high alert. Though the figure looked like his father, Thor felt it had already set him within its attack envelope. The column of light didn't dissipate so much as collapse downward. All that radiance condensed into the destroyer's gauntlet and formed a golden spear. Thor's eyes widened. Eternal spear? The spear was unmistakably Odin's eternal spear. As the destroyer seized it, its aura spiked. Wind pressure swelled. Dust and debris spiraled outward and spread with terrifying speed. Nick Fury and the others, only halfway out, were nearly engulfed. Noah drew another sword from his backpack. It was pure white with golden floral inlays along the blade. The hilt was gold with a blue gem, more artwork than weapon. Magic cut. His magic sect had finally evolved and granted him this blade. Noah swung it to send a focused gust toward the evacuating crowd, not to hurt them, but to keep the dust at bay. Using a wind technique trick, the gust first cleared the debris, then formed a wind wall behind Nick Fury and the civilians, shielding them. Once the civilians were safe, Noah stepped forward. "I'll go first." Thor spun Mjolnir and launched himself, hammer leading, intent on a direct strike. The impact should have smashed the destroyer, but this time Mjolnir was caught. The hammer clanged against enchanted metal and would not budge. Thor's jaw tightened, he tugged and couldn't free it. With the destroyer's other hand clutching the eternal spear, it swung a fist like a battering ram. The iron blow smashed into Thor's face, sending him and his hammer skidding aside. Noah's eye twitched. The destroyer's combat power was ridiculous, perhaps the strongest foe he'd yet faced. He drew a second blade, electrocution blade in his left hand, magic cut in his right. He couldn't summon Yone now or use Moonblossom sword technique, but dual weapon strikes would do. As he sprinted in, wind coalesced around him into a white trail, the result of his speed, and the air pressure built to a peak. He slashed with both swords in a single devastating move. Steel Tempest, double slash. A massive wind sword and a lightning crossed and carved toward the destroyer, intersecting like a blazing cross. The destroyer braced with the eternal spear. The spearhead erupted in golden light and shot a pillar at Noah. The light collided with his sword chi. After a tense stalemate, the pillar broke through and lunged at him, though its force was significantly weakened by the clash. Noah snapped his blades up and conjured a vertical wind wall threaded with yellow lightning. The weakened light pillar was stopped and dispersed. Noah stepped back in and struck again. The destroyer parried with the spear. At that moment, a hammer slammed into the destroyer's side. Thor had recovered, caught his hammer, raised it, and summoned lightning. Bolts converged and hammered the destroyer with raw energy. Lightning flashed and thunder roared, but the armor shook off the hit and walked through the smoke, undamaged. Noah muttered, "This is troublesome." What sort of Odin force did this thing contain? His left-hand armor retracted, revealing a bronze gauntlet, an accessory from the hero template he'd gained when summoning EZ. As a template item, he could conjure it at will. "It looks like this is going to be a long fight. Thor, can you hold out?" "Of course, I've faced far worse than this," Thor growled. Noah channeled power into the gauntlet. Energy pulsed and converged. The bronze fist gleamed with a brilliant light. "True shot barrage," he shouted, invoking EZ's ultimate. Chapter 49. Fierce Battle. The Power of Runes Revealed. A gigantic golden wave of energy erupted from Noah's bronze gauntlet and slammed into the destroyer in a streaming column of light. At the same moment, a massive beam shot from the destroyer's eternal spear and struck the wave. The collision produced a violent explosion that sent more of the town's buildings crashing down. Fires and blasts littered shattered streets. Collapsing masonry, the pop of electricals, and the smell of smoke filled the air. Watching the devastation, Noah knew they couldn't keep fighting on the ground without destroying the whole town. "Thor, let's take this into the sky. Don't ruin this place," Noah said. "Okay." Thor nodded, and the two shot upward. From above, Noah surveyed the ruined town and the destroyer burning in the wreckage. He slashed several arcs of sword chi toward the machine. The destroyer met each strike with the eternal spear, suffused with Odin's power, dispersing Noah's attacks. The destroyer looked up at the two hovering above, crouched, then pushed off the ground so forcefully it left a huge crater. It launched itself into the air to meet them. The three armored combatants tangled in midair, speed so great they broke the sound barrier, punctuated by sonic booms before they became streaks of light. Noah's armor was black with yellow lightning, Thor's silver with blue lightning, and the destroyer a blazing gold. Their clashes rent the sky with thunderous impacts. People down below watched, stunned. Tony arrived, jetting upward. His top speed was only marginally less than the others, enough to keep up. This time, he finally put his upgrades to use. The chest cluster cannon, enabled by his newly upgraded arc reactor, opened fire. With Jarvis coordinating, Tony landed several hits on the destroyer that disrupted its movements and left it vulnerable to follow-up strikes from Thor and Noah. Noah hammered the destroyer with the bronze gauntlet, repeatedly applying essence flux and detonating it with arcane missiles, each burst delivering magical shock damage. The golden glow on the destroyer's plating dimmed with every hit. Hovering and trading glances, Noah and Thor readied a coordinated strike. Thor raised Mjolnir as lightning poured down into the hammer. Noah withdrew the electrocution blade into his pack and drew out the magic cut, a weapon that greatly amplified his magical power. He began to channel the runic magic inside his body into the blade. It flared a silvery white. Their charge took only moments. The destroyer charged as well. Thor hurled Mjolnir, thunder packed into the hammer. Noah unleashed a concentrated white sword ki, sliced like a silvery crescent and condensed with raw magic, racing at the destroyer at lethal speed. Two devastating attacks met the machine, which for a moment held its ground, spear blazing with gathered Odin force. The golden being transformed into a streak of light and clashed with the hammer and the sword ki. Momentum carried through. The destroyer was crushed and drove like a white comet into the earth. Noah followed its trajectory and realized with a chill that many figures were moving toward the spot where the destroyer had fallen. Acting on instinct, he pushed his armor to maximum horsepower, activated Ghost Step, and dove toward the ground. Below, Nick Fury and his team were making a run for their Quinjet parked outside town. Fury had been tracking the sounds from the sky and now saw a golden mass hurtling straight for them. "Danger! Don't run!" Fury shouted. The destroyer crashed into the Quinjet's parking area with a thunderous impact. The Quinjet was smashed to pieces. The blast wave radiated outward. Those nearest the center of the explosion were about to be killed. Noah dove in at the last second, deployed a huge guardian shield born of the Resolve rune. The shield took the brunt of the impact and protected the people inside. Phew, almost didn't make it, Noah exhaled. Fury stared at the wreckage of the Quinjet with a mix of relief and dismay. It had been worth more than $250 million. But his life and the others had been spared. Thor and Tony landed soon after. Thor hurried over to Jane. He had feared the worst when he'd seen them in danger, but was grateful Noah had been there. Noah held the shield and swept his hand to clear the smoke and dust from the destroyer's ruin. The machine crawled from the rubble, its golden glow flaring brighter for a moment, but showing signs of failure. Noah could tell it was almost spent. "Is that all you've got? Then let me finish this." He summoned a rune and cradled it in his hand. Everyone's attention snapped to the small green stone. Thor felt an immense force emanating from it, divine in nature. Fury's expression tightened. He recognized the rune as something important within Noah's organization. Tony, puzzled, simply ordered Jarvis to record everything for later study. The rune pulsed life rather than aggression. Its magic radiated out, subtle but living. Unwittingly, the people nearby absorbed a little of that life energy. Their bodies strengthened slightly. The rune lifted Noah. This time he didn't fly with his armor, but the rune's power alone caused him to float. He activated it fully. Though the Resolve rune was not primarily an offensive rune, Noah had never unleashed its full force before. Now the rune's potent magic flooded outward. Space around him seemed to warp. The grasp of immortality and the force of explosion converged in his hand. The destroyer recognized the finality of the moment. Its golden light receded, and the eternal spear itself shone as the machine concentrated every last scrap of Odin's power into the weapon. The destroyer hurled the spear like a lance of gold directly at Noah. Noah released the rune's energy. The green, life-filled power did not merely block the spear, it crushed it without losing momentum, cleaving into the destroyer. The impact drove the machine into the earth. The ground around it melted, then the rune energy burrowed underground. The earth trembled, fissures spidered outward, glowing green. With a deafening roar, the ground ruptured, the cracks widening into a canyon that stretched for 1,000 meters. What had been a fissure was now a wound torn clean through the landscape. The shield around the survivors held, shielding them from the energy's surge, but the dust and sand hid the scene until it settled. When the view cleared, everyone stared in stunned disbelief at the massive chasm where the destroyer had stood. "What happened?" Coulson murmured. The devastation looked like the work of some superweapon. Hard to believe one person had caused it. Fury realized he had greatly underestimated Noah and the organization behind him. Noah watched their faces with a grim satisfaction. The World Rune's reputation was no exaggeration. Even the Resolve Rune, not normally thought of as an offensive tool, could unleash catastrophic power. He knew he had not even fully mastered it. If he could gain full control of the rune and gather others, he could very well threaten the world. "That was some power, Noah," Thor said, awed but glad his friend had been on their side this day. He checked the wreckage. This time the destroyer was gone for good. "I have to go back and find Loki and make him answer for this," Thor said. He had regained much of his divine strength and intended to confront Loki himself. "Jane, wait for me. I'll return." "No," Noah said suddenly. "Wait, Thor, can I come with you?" "Thor, I'll go with you. I haven't been to Asgard yet." Noah spoke up suddenly. Thor glanced at him. "You want to return to Asgard with us, wizard? Very well. After this, I'll make sure you're well treated." Noah hadn't expected Thor to refuse. He'd wanted to see Asgard for a while, but the real reason was the mission interface he'd reopened after facing the destroyer. The B-rank mission for the destroyer had finally marked itself complete, which meant the destroyer would not come back to life. A message pulsed in his head. Mission complete. Gained 2,000 essence. Hero Magic Engine X1. 2,000 points in a magic engine? Worth the fight, Noah muttered, pleased. He'd thought the destroyer would be straightforward, but it had a second phase and had fought far longer than in the films. He wanted to know who had been behind it. With the reward added, his essence totaled 5,300. A new B-rank mission had just appeared. B-rank mission, prevent the Bifrost Bridge from being destroyed. Noah stared at the new objective. It sounded simple enough. In the movie, after Thor defeated the destroyer, he returned to Asgard, then argued with Loki from Odin's room all the way to the Bifrost. Loki seized the Bifrost's activator and cranked it up, intending to destroy Jotunheim. Thor smashed the bridge to stop him. To complete this mission, Noah would just have to stop Loki from destroying the Bifrost. But was it already too late? In the film, the destroyer had been taken down in moments, while the version they faced here had dragged on. Could Loki already have melted Jotunheim? Noah pushed that thought aside. Even if Jotunheim were destroyed, what mattered was the Bifrost itself. If the bridge remained intact, the mission might still count. But he couldn't confirm from afar. He had to go to Asgard. So he followed Thor to the marked spot for the Bifrost. They stood on the mark to make it easier for Heimdall to target their location. Heimdall could see across the 9 realms. If Thor called him from somewhere he could see, Heimdall could open the Bifrost there. Thor shouted for Heimdall, but nothing happened. The sky stayed silent and Thor's worry grew. Heimdall never delayed like this. At last the clouds spun and a shimmer of rainbow light welled up. Thor breathed out in relief. If Heimdall had truly been indisposed, they wouldn't have known how to return. After one more quick goodbye and a passionate kiss shared with Jane, the Bifrost curled around them and transported them away. The others watched with wide eyes as the colors of the bridge swallowed the group. Inside, stars streaked past like a river of light. The passage was short. Moments later, they stepped out of the Bifrost into Asgard, and the first sight froze their blood. Before them stood a humanoid figure sheathed in ice. Thor recognized him at once, Heimdall, frozen solid. Beside the Bifrost's activator stood Loki, the eternal spear in his hand, smirking coldly at the arriving group. "Brother, you finally returned, but it's too late," Loki said. "I'm going to destroy Jotunheim and prove I'm fit to be king." He held the spear like a sovereign about to deliver judgment. The scene needed context, how Heimdall had ended up frozen and why Loki stood at the bridge about to trigger catastrophe. Heimdall had confronted Loki as their argument threatened to turn physical. Loki, cunning as ever, had used a frost device to freeze Heimdall and then brought Laufey, king of the frost giants, into Odin's chamber while Odin lay in the deep sleep. Heimdall had been resilient and resourceful. He'd broken through the ice and freed himself quickly. From a vantage point, he turned his gaze to Earth and saw Thor and Noah locked in a brutal, drawn-out battle with a version of the destroyer that moved unlike the cinematic one. Heimdall then looked toward Odin's hall and saw Loki leading Laufey into Odin's sleeping quarters. If someone attacked Odin while he slept, he would be entirely defenseless. He seeks to do something terrible, Heimdall thought, and rushed back to the palace. He borrowed a patrolling celestial skiff to get there faster. Laufey, impatient and gleeful at the sight of a defenseless Odin, reached for the great door. A blue sheen spread from his touch, and the door froze, cracking into shards. Inside, Frigga tried to intervene and was swept aside as Laufey approached Odin. He pried open Odin's eyelids, wanting him to witness what was to come. "I hear you still sense things while you sleep," Laufey hissed. "I want you to know it was Laufey who killed you." His hand formed an ice dagger, but before the blow landed, a beam of light erupted and sent Laufey hurtling backward. The attacker took a theatrical, heroic stance. "Loki. You were slain by Loki, son of Odin," he declared, emotionless. Loki's act appeared to save Odin. He had brought Laufey to the throne room only to strike him down, proving his loyalty to Odin and Frigga, and in his mind, proving his worth as Odin's son, not as a frost giant. Frigga embraced Loki, relieved and grateful. Heimdall arrived just in time to see Loki's seeming rescue, and for a moment he was uncertain of Loki's motives. Why bring Laufey inside only to kill him? Heimdall decided to watch and wait. Loki moved toward the Bifrost next to the activation device to carry out the final step of his scheme. He found a spot where Heimdall had been frozen earlier, left only a scatter of ice shards. Then he allowed himself a faint smile and taunted, "Heimdall, come out. I know you're following." Heimdall slipped out from behind a pillar. He had no time for riddles. Loki stood at the activation point. Something was clearly wrong. Heimdall demanded to know what Loki intended. Understand this, Heimdall, Loki said coldly. I am now the rightful king of Asgard. Everything I do will be for Asgard. I will destroy Jotunheim. Let that enemy disappear. Heimdall's eyes widened. Destroy Jotunheim? That's insanity. The 9 realms would be thrown into chaos. War would follow, and Asgard would be blamed. Heimdall drew his sword and stepped forward. Asgard's sentinel was a master swordsman, blessed with a sight that pierced the realms. His attacks were fast and precise. Loki was driven back, pressured by Heimdall's blade. Heimdall seized an opening and parried the eternal spear, slashing hard. But as his sword touched where Loki had been, the prince vanished. It was an illusion. Before Heimdall could react, a golden beam screamed past behind him. The spear's energy was deadly. It would have killed him. Loki, seeing Heimdall as a serious obstacle, abandoned subtlety. He produced the frost device and fired a freezing ray. Heimdall twisted aside, but the blue beam struck the Bifrost fortress wall and spread ice across it. Heimdall saw Loki's arm paling and turning blue where it had touched the device, too much like the frost giants. A chilling thought crossed his mind. Could Loki be something other than he seemed? At that moment, Heimdall heard Thor shouting his name from far away. The distraction gave Loki the opening he wanted. He fired another freezing beam, and this time, Heimdall could not avoid it. Ice creaked and burst out from Heimdall's feet and raced up his body. He tried to break free, but the frost tightened. Before the ice sealed him completely, Heimdall hurled his sword toward the Bifrost activation platform. With his remaining strength, he channeled a message into the blade with dark energy, Thor's location. Then Heimdall's form stilled, frozen solid. Loki's expression hardened as he stepped to the activation device. No sooner had he reached it than the bridge's entrance lit up, and Thor and Noah stepped out onto Asgard's soil. You are too late, Loki cried to Thor. Brother, I will destroy Jotunheim. With that, he raised the eternal spear as if to drive it into the activation mechanism. I will destroy Jotunheim, to prove I am the one who can inherit the throne of Asgard. Loki's face contorted in a vicious snarl. He gripped the eternal spear, poised to thrust it into the Bifrost activator. A flash of gold light appeared behind him, and an electric blade, shaped like a jagged bolt of lightning, pressed against his side and released a surge of electricity. Ah! Caught off guard, Loki was drenched in yellow lightning. His whole body convulsed as arcs of electricity leapt from the 2 horns of his helmet. When Noah withdrew the blade, Loki was smoking, his eyes glazed over. He collapsed to the floor, the eternal spear clattering from his hand. So much nonsense. I had to give you a good shock to teach you what happens to villains who talk too much. Noah pulled the blade free from Loki's kidney area. Loki had come dangerously close to activating the Bifrost. If he had opened it, Noah might not have been able to close it. Too many uncertain variables. Better to end it quickly. Noah had used Flash to appear behind Loki and administered a swift jolt of electrotherapy. Thor, wiping cold sweat from his brow, let out a relieved breath. That's amazing, wizard. No, Noah. You did it. Loki almost destroyed Jotunheim just now. Thor stepped forward, pried the smoking horned helmet off Loki, and twisted his hands behind his back to secure him. How did you get over there like that? It was so fast. I didn't even see you move. Flash. Noah smiled faintly. And Thor, don't call me wizard. Call me Noah Lee, just an ordinary mage and swordsman. He sounded modest. In truth, his magical repertoire was idiosyncratic and still growing. Thor bowed his head. Noah Lee, then. You are a friend of Asgard. Come, let the servants show you to the guest chambers. I will hold a banquet to properly welcome our friends from Midgard. First, I must see how father and mother are, and take Heimdall to be healed. Thor hefted Loki and strode toward Valhalla. At the same time, several attendants had already pulled Heimdall from the ice. He had been struck twice by the frozen cube in quick succession. His face was ashen and had taken on a faint purplish cast. Hogun and Fandral each supported one of his arms. He looks badly hurt, Fandral said. We should fetch a healer. No need, Noah said. He extended his hand. A stream of emerald air flowed from his palm and washed over Heimdall, warm, gentle, and restorative. Noah called it resurrection wind. The two who held Heimdall felt the warmth spread through them, fatigue lifting as if by magic, and Heimdall's color returned from purple to a healthy flush. His eyes opened, and he stared up at Noah with immediate gratitude. Thank you, Mr. Noah. he said, voice steady. Heimdall's senses were keen even when unconscious. He had perceived who saved him. Volstagg, hovering nearby, gaped. Incredible, Noah. I never imagined Midgard would have someone like you, powerful and full of strange talents. The warriors three nodded in agreement. Midgard to them was mostly ordinary mortals. Noah shattered that expectation. Noah, you're too humble. Volstagg chattered as they walked. Come to the hall. The banquet will be magnificent. All kinds of food, great wine. Noah humored him with nods, while something else happened in the background. A small notification popped up only he could see. Task completed. Received 800 essence. 800 essence? Noah blinked. The task had been trivial. Use flash, jab Loki, stop the Bifrost. He'd expected something more dramatic, but the reward materialized anyway. His essence tally climbed, now 6,100. That meant another 10 pull was possible. They flew on. Noah's eyes drifted over the Asgardian architecture and the ships that patrolled the sky, long wooden craft with winged struts that skimmed like boats over the air. The style was archaic and elegant. Lyssandra's voice chimed in his ear, teasing about a delicacy overhead. Volstagg went on at length about the best courses at the banquet. Noah smiled thinly, amused and mildly put off by the gluttony, then let himself be led into the great hall. The servants had already nearly finished setting the tables. Thor's orders had come only minutes before, yet everything was almost ready. They ushered Noah into a guest room, richly appointed in a medieval Asgardian style. Heavy tapestries, carved wood, and wall reliefs showing Odin leading the 9 realms to peace. Noah stood for a moment, tracing the carvings with his eyes and thinking idly of tricks Hela had pulled in a past tale, though this was only a guest chamber, not a throne room. His battle armor receded into a slim belt. He left his headphones on, convenient for keeping talk going with Lysandra. Settling into a high-backed chair, Noah opened the summoning interface and prepared to do a pull. Just as he reached out, a subtle pressure brushed at the edge of his awareness. He turned. A phantom shimmered on the wall, an apparition of a white-haired, bearded man wearing an eye patch over his right eye. Odin All-Father stood before him in soul form. Noah, Odin said, forcing a small, rare smile into his usually stern features. Greetings, mortal of Midgard. Noah blinked. He had not expected the king of Asgard to come to him directly, and the old god felt oddly insubstantial, clearly in a soul state, his physical body likely still in the Odin sleep. Noah bowed once. A pleasure to meet you, All-Father Odin. Odin's gaze was steady. I sensed an unusual power within you, one that does not belong to these realms. Noah held up a hand and let a mote of his magic glow in his palm. Odin's left eye narrowed. From that small light he confirmed what he already suspected. The energy emanating from Noah carried an origin unlike anything in the 9 realms, or even their universe. It radiated a fierce life force, a hint of creation itself. For a moment, Odin's ancient mind reached for a comparison. This energy had a quality somewhat like the Infinity Stones. Odin explained, quietly and without accusation, that the anomaly of the destroyer had been, in part, a test. When Thor struck the destroyer with Mjolnir and stirred the wisp of Odin force within it, that force had acted as a beacon. Odin had noticed Noah the first time Noah touched the Odin force lodged in Mjolnir. The pattern of Noah's power suggested origins beyond Odin's knowledge, and curiosity had driven him to use the destroyer as an instrument of discovery. The All-Father's tone softened, weary with the weight of long years. You are friend to my son, he said. That makes you a friend of Asgard. I sense potential in you. You could be of service in the coming days. His breath faltered in that ghostly form. The Odin force within him had become harder to control with each passing year. It demanded sleep to be kept in check. He felt his time running thin, and he had foreseen a catastrophe, the twilight of the gods, looming over Asgard's future. He did not know if Thor alone could stave it off when it came. He must lay groundwork, and Noah, however young by Asgardian measures, might prove useful when the time came. But you are still young, Odin added after a pause. In our reckoning, you are but in your infancy. For now, enjoy Asgard's hospitality. With that, the ghost of Odin smiled once more and faded. Noah watched him go, feeling a mixture of intrigue and irritation. The Allfather's words had been opaque, half riddle, half warning. Noah had little patience for riddles. A brief grin crossed his face. Riddlers, he thought. He hated them. He turned back to his summoning. The blue vortex spun up, familiar effects blooming around him as the interface prepared to deliver whatever fate the pull had in store. Chapter 52. Call. Is Asgard a lottery mecca? When the vortex vanished, 10 light orbs and a treasure chest hung in the summoning interface before Noah. Stormrazor, amplification codex, needlessly large rod, stopwatch. Huh, a lot of items. Noah raised an eyebrow in surprise. The first 4 orbs he opened all yielded equipment, much better than potions or wards. He clicked through the rest one by one. Random Hero Shard X1. Random Hero Shard X1. The Boss. Set. Random Hero Trial Card X1. Random Skin Shard X1. Project Warwick. A hero? Noah's heart gave a small hop. As Set's shard registered, a flash of memory streaked into his mind. Scraps of underground arenas, a half-beast youth, cheers and brawls. They used to call me a beast boy. Now the boy has grown up, a voice in those memories said. Noah felt the echoes of those memories settle in him. He checked his body and noticed only a slight increase in physical strength. Not much, but real. He reached up to his scalp and, relieved, confirmed he hadn't sprouted beast ears. Set's template. The boss, half human, half Vastaya, had some magic talent as well as raw fighting skill. Raised in pit fights, the boss trained himself into a formidable brawler and could call upon a power called grit, an ability that blended physical force and magic into a single surging strength. Noah thought of it as a kind of battle chi. For him, it was a useful addition. His physique would keep growing thanks to the Resolve rune, so he could channel more force through it. Noah clenched his fists and felt a golden light flare across his body. A golden aura kindled. His hair rose as if lifted by an unseen wind. If someone had seen him then, they would have thought he'd been lit by a ball of flame. The feeling of invincibility washed over him. A bit like what Super Saiyan looked like in old stories. Emotions could power grit too. In Set's case, being hit could stoke it, converting anger into strength. When the golden light faded, Noah inspected the other summons. Another project skin, he murmured at the Project Warwick icon. He clicked it, and a USB drive identical to the one he'd gotten with Project Yasuo popped into his hand. No hero template, so no full project armor like Yasuo. He turned the drive over. With Yasuo's template, he'd access the skin's full powers. Without Warwick's template, this would only grant partial benefits, similar to the Lysandra program item. Noah tucked the drive near his belt. A small nanocomposite tentacle extended and linked into the drive. A moment later, Lysandra's voice chimed. Noah, I can read the USB. Holographic data projected in front of him. This set of files wasn't armor schematics. It was manufacturing data for a mechanical hunter. Project Warwick. The data described a trump card the Source Project company had created to deal with rogue project heroes. This is manufacturing data for Project Warwick. Noah felt a grin tug at his lips. His mechanical army, Heimerdinger's Hextech creations like the Hextech Tyrannosaurus, Hextech Bear, and Hextech Dragon, had been in planning. Project Warwick could be another terrifying general for that army. He looked back at the pile of loot. 2 hero shards, a skin shard, a trial card, and an array of equipment. No potions or wards. My luck's good this run, he said to himself. Maybe Asgard's summoning is biased toward the generous? He opened the hero shards. Shard, Fey Sorceress, Lulu. Shard, the Curious Chameleon Nico. Not bad. Noah liked both heroes. Nico's shape-shifting and cloning, Lulu's whimsy and wild growth. He absorbed the shards, and 2 streaks of light folded into him as he took on portions of their power. He tried to call for Pix, Lulu's Fey companion, but there was nothing. He hadn't gained the familiar, only the spells themselves. There's no one here to test them on, he muttered. He wouldn't mess up someone else's room with furniture transformation. He'd wait for the banquet and try them on the stout warrior Volstagg. Still, he couldn't resist experimenting a little. Noah pressed his hand to the chair he'd been sitting in. A purple light flared, and a purple aura shimmered beside the chair. In a blink, another identical high-backed chair blinked into existence. Oh my God, I turned into a chair! Noah's voice came from the chair itself, absurdly clear. The sight of a chair walking on its 4 legs with a stiff, bouncing gait was ridiculous. He let it happen a moment, then a flash returned him to human form. Nico's energy, Shoma, the tribe's word for the soul that inhabited objects, pulsed in his palm. Nico used Shoma to seize the souls of objects and transform, so a chair could be mimicked. Noah squinted. Do wards have souls too? He wondered, half amused. Even if not, the power had clearly found a way to imitate. He tested the other Nico skill next. He focused and a mirror image peeled away from him, an identical twin, an echo. This was Nico's twin blossom shadow, a clone that could mimic his appearance and actions. It's like Loki's decoys, but I control it. The copy had no mind of its own. It would just stand around blankly unless Noah willed it. He nudged the clone to kick the chair. The chair staggered. It can attack. Not bad. He pushed further. Closing his eyes, he drew more of the Shoma and split himself. One by one, mirror images separated from his body. Phew. I can only sustain 9 clones at once, he realized, panting as he reached his limit. Phew. I can only sustain 9 clones at once. 9 voices echoed in perfect synchronicity, a comical chorus. Keeping 9 unconscious copies under control was tricky. They kept lagging, repeating phrases, and almost devolving into chaos. Noah dismissed them, and they dissipated into smoke. Noah laid everything out to examine it. The equipment before him: blasting wand, long sword 2, dagger, cloak of agility, chain vest, stopwatch time 2, cloth armor, storm razor, needlessly large rod, amplification codex. He ran item recipes through his head. He didn't need gold to buy synthesis books here. Possessing the necessary components was enough. Greatsword plus chain vest, guardian angel? He thought, and he tried combining storm razor and chain vest. Nothing happened. All right, TFT recipes don't apply, he shrugged, but he kept scanning his inventory for the missing piece. Then his eyes landed on the 2 stopwatches and lit up. That's it. He'd gotten a stopwatch before, but hadn't fully studied it. Now there were 2, perfect for synthesis. He placed a stopwatch beside the storm razor and chain vest. A light wrapped the trio. The sound of hammers striking began, rhythmic and steady. The glow died down slowly, and the outline of a new item took shape. Guardian Angel was about to be born. As the light dispersed, faint hymns echoed through the void, as if welcoming a guardian angel into the world. A sword gleaming with holy light appeared before Noah. Beneath its hilt sat a crystal blue gem, flanked by 2 pairs of flawless white wings, as if an angel itself guarded the blade. Mysterious runes were carved along the metal, and the whole weapon radiated a sacred, solemn aura. The guardian angel floated in the air, its 2 pairs of wings stirring gently and casting a calm, pure light. This guardian angel is beautiful, so sacred, Noah murmured, reaching out to touch the wings. They felt soft and light, delicate and silky. His fingertips slid over the feathers, and he had the odd, warm sensation of being protected. After feeling the wings, Noah took hold of the sword. A surge of holy power poured from the blade, wrapping the room in brilliant light. Outside, a golden pillar of light shot up from Noah's room, unimpeded by the building, as if it were an illusion. 2 ethereal pairs of wings formed around the pillar, closing first to enshroud it, and then slowly unfurling. My lord, what is that? Many Asgardians gathered and whispered in astonishment. Asgard had been unusually peaceful in recent years, so they did not take it as a sign of catastrophe, more like a spectacle produced by whatever powers watched over them. On the balcony of Odin's bedchamber, in his soul form, Odin reappeared, standing by the railing and observing the commotion. Another powerful artifact, he said to himself. Mysterious Midgardian, what kind of being stands behind you? Inside Noah's room, the light gradually faded and the pillar dissolved. The 2 pairs of wings broke into motes of golden light that scattered across the floor. The moment he gripped the sword, Noah had felt a connection forming with the guardian angel. Now the bond completed. If he died, the guardian angel would resurrect him, so I'm bound to it now, he thought. I've got a second life. I just don't know the cooldown on the resurrection. Hopefully it's not a one-time thing. Curious, Noah probed the sword's properties. It did more than grant resurrection. He raised the blade and poured a thread of his magic essence into it. Immediately, the guardian angel burst into light again, bathing the room. Blinding, Noah squinted, drawing his essence back as the illumination dimmed. It converts my magic into holy power. Maybe it has bonuses against the undead, or light and darkness types, could be effective against dimensional demons like Dormammu. He made a mental note. If he ever faced something like Dormammu, he planned to try a few high-intensity flashes from this blade. A voice called from the hallway. What happened here? Oh, Noah, so that's where you are. Was that your doing? Thor had come to investigate the Pillar of Light. Having his last coronation interrupted by frost giants, he was sensitive to strange signs in Asgard and rushed faster than the patrols. When the Asgardian guards arrived, Thor waved them off. He had already checked the scene. No trouble at all. I was testing a weapon, Noah said, holding up the guardian angel. The two pairs of wings on the sword fluttered gently. Of course not. I thought the enemy had returned, Thor replied. He eyed the sword. Noah, you have so many artifacts. Me, I only have one. He glanced at Mjolnir at his hip and laughed as the hammer began to vibrate, as if offended by the remark. Thor placated it before it settled. My Mjolnir gets jealous. Also, the banquet's about to start. You should go ahead. I need to fetch Jane. I promised I'd show her the Bifrost and Asgard. Thor had already seen his parents. His father still slumbered. His mother, Frigga, worried about his life on Midgard. Thor had told her about his friends from Earth, and lingered a little when speaking of a woman named Jane. Frigga, perceptive as ever, had asked Thor to bring his Midgard companions to the banquet so she could meet the first girl to capture her son's heart. All right, you go on. I'll be there shortly, Noah said. He still had a treasure chest and a previously acquired hero engine to open before he left. Thor launched into the air with his hammer to fetch Heimdall, and Noah returned to the summoner interface. He tapped the remaining reward chest from his 10 summon. It vibrated and glowed blue as it opened. 2 orbs drifted free, 1 white, 1 blue. Noah tapped both. Obtained 3,000 essence, obtained Gwen. The white orb returned 3,000 essence, half his summoning cost. The blue orb produced something unexpected, a cloth doll. Noah caught it as it floated down. The doll had curly blue pigtails tied with bows, wore a white and purple dress with a large bow at the chest and a metal badge he didn't recognize. Its painted face smiled innocently. Cute, Noah said aloud, puzzled. Can the system even make toys? He held the doll and tried infusing it with magic essence. The moment he poured the first wisp in, the doll reacted. It began to draw magic from him, steadily absorbing his reserves. When his inner store dropped to half, the doll finally stopped. It floated up, oscillated, and began to glow blue. A faint blue mist coalesced around it. Noah watched, eyes widening. Ah! A crisp, girlish gasp split the air. The Gwen cloth doll transformed in midair into a young woman. Startled by being airborne, she cried out again, the sensation of falling only to be replaced by the warmth of a catching embrace. A pair of hands swept her into a Princess Carrie. Noah looked down at the incredibly cute girl in his arms. Long, slightly curled lashes framing clear blue eyes, the left pupil marked like a cross-shaped button. Her figure was slender and perfectly proportioned. Her outfit was an enlarged version of the doll's dress, exactly as she'd worn it before. Noah blushed when he felt the softness of her form and the silky smooth touch of stocking against his hand. He quickly set her down, still a little flustered. He recognized her instantly. Gwen? He asked, half in disbelief. He had summoned hero templates before, things that merged a hero's power into his body, but he had never expected an actual hero to appear. And of all heroes, it was Gwen from League of Legends, the one he fancied. That's right, she answered. It's Gwen, Summoner. That's right. Gwen, Summoner. Gwen straightened her stockings and smoothed the wrinkles from her clothes where Noah had hugged her, then smiled up at him. Summoner? Noah considered the title for a moment, then returned her smile. Welcome to this world, Gwen. Call me Noah. Okay, Noah. I can't wait to see everything this world has to offer. Please take me. I want to experience it all. Noah nodded. He knew how much Gwen, once a doll, loved being human now that she'd been changed. He remembered her story. Gwen, the hallowed seamstress, had begun as a cloth doll sewn by a seamstress from Comivore named Isolde. The doll adored her mistress. When Isolde and the king fell in love, their happiness was shattered by violence. During an assassination attempt on the king, Isolde was fatally wounded. Unable to accept her death, King Viego sought the fabled spring of life on the Blessed Isles. He placed Isolde's body in those holy waters, and she rose, not as she had been, but as a wraith. Seizing the ruined king's blade, she stabbed Viego, and the blade's magic transformed the isles into the ruined Shadow Isles. A terrible power swept across the land, twisting all life and even the dead into restless spirits. In that calamity, pieces of Isolde's soul were scattered. One fragment was absorbed by the little doll. Millennia later, the doll somehow became human, Gwen as she was now. Gwen treasured her humanity. She loved the world and hated the idea of Viego tearing it apart to bring Isolde back. She'd fought with the Sentinels of Light to seal him and stop the ruin. Though part of her longed to see her mistress again and show Isolde what she had become, Gwen knew Isolde would never ask the world to suffer for her. Now newly human and still curious about everything, Gwen was like a child discovering day after day of wonder. Noah smiled to himself. He would show her the world and beyond. The Marvel universe was vast. Beyond Earth, there were countless civilizations. When the time was right, he'd take Gwen exploring through the stars. Ahem, Gwen, there's a banquet starting soon. It can be a sort of welcome for you. Shall we head over? Noah cleared his throat, smoothing the slight awkwardness he'd felt drifting in his thoughts. He'd almost been imagining future adventures the moment they met. Gwen's face lit up. Oh, a banquet? Yay! I love banquets. I watched Isolde go to so many of them, but I never got to attend. Now I finally can. Let's go, Noah. She grabbed his hand and practically skipped for the door, the excitement of someone newly human in everything she saw. Even so, her wonder was genuine and childlike. How do we get there? She asked after they stepped into the long corridor, pausing and looking at the unfamiliar hallways. No rush, Noah answered. We've got time. I'll show you around. They walked slowly. Gwen craned her neck at the high arches and gilded furnishings. Noah told her about Asgard, its myths and its people, and every time he said words like gods, Gwen gave an admiring little squeal. The corridors wound and twisted for longer than Noah expected, and he couldn't help thinking whoever designed this place hated straight lines. When at last they reached the banquet hall, the massive doors were thrown open by the guards, and a warm golden light spilled out. The scent of fine wine and the sound of music washed over them. The hall was everything Noah half imagined and more. Gold-trimmed pillars and a throne of gleaming metal set high above the crowd, stone and bronze accents in a bold Nordic style. Asgardians mingled and laughed. A band played, and the long tables groaned under mountains of food. The warriors were already drinking and carving roasted meat with abandon. Noah, you're here, a booming voice called. Thor stood at the side, flanked by Jane and the others, Daisy and Eric among them. The Earth trio looked around with wide-eyed fascination. None of them had been to Asgard before. Thor had just returned from visiting his parents. He'd brought Jane and the others along by summoning the Bifrost, and the beam's light had already faded when Nick Fury and Agent Coulson arrived, so Fury had missed them. Who's this? Thor asked, eyeing Gwen at Noah's side. He'd seen Noah alone before, so where did this girl come from? Thor didn't recognize her as an Asgardian, and a woman like this would not go unnoticed here. Before Noah could answer, Gwen spoke up, sweet and bright. Hello, everyone. My name's Gwen. I'm a doll. A ripple of bewilderment went through the hall. Daisy blinked at Noah, trying to process what she'd heard. Noah felt the curious stares. Then, with a soft puff of blue smoke, Gwen shrank down into a perfectly crafted cloth doll. The Asgardians around them gasped. Even Jane and the others, after so much already seen that day, felt their sense of reality buckle a little at the sight. Is that some sorcery from Midgard? Thor demanded, marveling. Noah didn't correct him. He watched Gwen, who now stood waving a tiny pair of scissors in the air. Gwen, change back. We're about to start the feast, he urged. Right, Noah. With a quick shimmer, the doll grew back into human form. Noah noticed for the first time a small pair of blue scissors hanging at her waist, delicate and real but oddly small, matching the miniature she'd just been. Thor, boomed another voice. Volstagg and the warriors three strode over, Sif close behind. Volstagg's face was eager and loud. Thor, you've returned. Now the banquet can begin. How could it start without the guest of honor? Do you have anything to say? Thor stepped to the center of the hall. He looked out at the crowd, then to Jane, and drew her closer. People of Asgard, Thor Odinson, I was cast to Midgard by my father because of my flaws, and I've learned from that exile. I was arrogant and thoughtless before. In Midgard I changed, and I owe a great part of that to one person, Jane. Jane blushed under the gaze of the assembled crowd, while Thor, sensing her embarrassment, kept the moment brief. He ended with a promise to lead Asgard to even greater glory. The hall erupted in cheers. With that, the feast was declared officially open, the music rose, and the long tables began to fill with the sounds of revelry, while Noah stood a little apart, watching Gwen laugh and look around with the wonder of someone who had, at last, become part of the world she loved. Chapter 55. Fantastic Transfiguration. When Thor announced the start of the banquet, the Asgardians erupted into cheers that filled the great hall. Noah and Gwen took their places at a table with Thor's friends, Jane and her companions, Sif and the Warriors Three, and a few others Noah didn't recognize, Thor's circle in Asgard. "By the way, Thor, how's Loki doing?" Noah asked, noticing the trickster's absence and guessing he was probably locked away in some private cell. "He's in the dungeon for now. Once my father wakes, he'll decide what to do with him," Thor replied, setting his goblet down. Noah nodded. As he'd suspected, Loki's mischief had landed him behind bars, though Noah had to admit Loki's accommodations were far more comfortable than most prisons. Never mind Loki. He made his choice and must be punished. "Tonight we celebrate. Cheers, friends." Thor raised his cup. Some of the golden Asgardian brew sloshed over the rim as he thrust the cup forward, and he drained it. He paused, as if remembered something, and then set the cup back on the table instead of smashing it. Laughter and drinking followed around them. Jane took a delicate sip. Her friend Daisy drank eagerly. Daisy wasn't normally a heavy drinker, but she knew this might be a rare taste and wanted as much of it as she could get. Eric kept his cup mostly untouched. He still blushed at the memory of how embarrassingly drunk he'd been once, a story Jane loved to retell. Gwen stuck out her tongue with a little wince after sampling the strong liquor. The Asgardian wine was spicy and sharp, but the lively banquet mood warmed her, and she smiled. Curious, since she'd never tried it before, she picked up a goblet and took a cautious sip. The rich flavor and biting heat made her stick out her tongue again. "Hello, 2 fruit wines, please." Noah called to a passing maid when he saw Gwen's reaction. He didn't drink much. The bitter, fiery taste of most liquors put him off. Fruit wine, though, sweet, fragrant, was another matter. "Certainly, one moment." The maid returned with a tray and set 2 glasses before them. "Thanks," Gwen said to Noah with a wink before bringing her glass to her nose. The sweet aroma reassured her. She sipped and closed her eyes in contentment. Noah tried his glass and agreed. "Asgardian wine is really good." Thor overheard and grinned. "Of course. We Asgardians are professionals at brewing." Round after round, the merriment only grew louder. Plates emptied and were refilled as maids kept bringing more delicacies. When a drink was finished, many Asgardians smashed their bronze goblets against the table and shouted for another. Fortunately, the goblets were bronze. If they'd been Earth's fragile glass, the floor would have been a glittering mess. The boisterous Volstagg, now well into his cups, was retelling the tale of how Thor and Noah had defeated the destroyer on Midgard. "I'm telling you, when the destroyer landed, it flattened everything for miles. And then Thor." Volstagg's voice went grander and grander. He exaggerated shamelessly, much to Thor's embarrassment, but Gwen listened with wide-eyed wonder, hanging on every word. "Volstagg, stop boasting," someone teased. "You always blow things out of proportion." "Don't believe me? I swear this witch from Midgard fought at Thor's side. Witch, show them a trick, prove you're powerful." Volstagg crowed, eager to be believed. Noah hadn't been paying special attention until he heard himself named. "The first witch from Midgard?" he thought, startled. He waved his hand. "No, there are a lot of people here. I'm too shy to perform." "Come on, witch, show us! Let's cheer for the witch! Witch!" Volstagg egged him on, and the table took up the chant. Gwen joined in as well, and Noah raised an eyebrow. "All right, since you insist," Noah said, deciding to try something. He'd sketched out a few new spells that day. This would be a good chance to test them. He pointed. A purple bolt of magic shot from his hand, trailing a scattering of green leaves as it flew straight toward Volstagg. "What?" Volstagg barely finished before the bolt hit him. A puff of white smoke erupted, green leaves whirling inside it. The crowd leaned forward. Less than a second later, the smoke thinned and gasps spread across the hall. "What happened? Why are you all so tall?" Volstagg's voice came out oddly high. The warriors looked around, puzzled. Something was wrong, but then laughter broke out. When the smoke cleared, Volstag's burly, bearded form had been replaced by a small, golden-furred boarlet. He wasn't just any pig. He was a cute, plump wild boar with a shimmering mane that matched his former beard. "Volstagg, you look adorable. Much better than before." Fandral grinned and ambled over. He scooped up the little boar by its front leg and hoisted it as it wriggled and squealed. "Put me down! Put me down!" Volstagg shouted, but to everyone else his words sounded like excited pig squeals, little frantics. "Oink oink! Oink oink!" The hall echoed as people laughed. Noah could hear human speech beneath the squealing. The spell let him. He also thought he detected a smile from Frigga, who watched from not far away. She was a witch herself, even if none of the performances ever mentioned it. The transformation didn't last long. That didn't mean Noah's spell, whimsy, as he'd been calling these tricks, had to be brief. The duration depended on his will. If he wanted, he could have kept Volstagg a boar indefinitely, though only while Noah remained close. Sure enough, after a few more squeals, the boarlet was engulfed in smoke again. When the cloud cleared, Volstagg towered once more over Fandral, who now lay pinned under his weight. Fandral scrambled and laughed, rubbing his shoulder. Sorry, I was only teasing," Fandral panted, still smiling. "You scoundrel," Volstagg bellowed, regaining his usual booming voice. "Witch, turn this one into something too." Noah shook his head. He raised a hand and this time looked squarely at Volstagg. "You're next." Chapter 56. So Big. "Meow? Volstagg, try that one again." Noah suddenly brightened. He hadn't used the 2 skills he'd gotten from Lulu's fragments yet. After trying one, whimsy, he wanted to test wild growth. He raised his hand and released another pulse of purple magic. "Again?" Volstagg paled and reflexively flung the cup next to him. The cup, arcing through the air, ran straight into Noah's spell. A purple magic circle blossomed around it, and to everyone's astonishment, the cup swelled until it was bigger than Volstagg himself, then crashed to the floor with a thunderous bang. The Asgardians nearby, sobered by the sight of a falling mass, scrambled back to avoid danger. "Wow, Noah is amazing! Turn them into Gwen's scissors!" Gwen crowed, delighted. She drew the scissors from her waist, and a blue holy aura wrapped them. The small blades began to swell, mirroring the cup's transformation. Gwen held the now giant scissors up to Noah with an eager look. "All right." Noah tapped the scissors, and the purple circle appeared again. This time, everyone stayed farther away. The scissors expanded tenfold. What had been roughly human-sized became an enormous pair nearly 18 meters long, as tall as Gwen herself. "So big," Gwen squealed. The giant blades started to tip. Lulu's wild growth didn't just increase size, it increased mass too, and if those scissors fell, it would be catastrophic. Just as the scissors began to fall and Thor was about to rush in, an invisible force arrested them in midair. Noah raised his hand and used magic to support Gwen's gargantuan scissors. With his current reserve, holding them up was effortless. "Hey, sorry, I almost caused trouble," Gwen said, sticking out her tongue. A moment later, she shrank the scissors back to normal and hung them from her belt. "Noah, I didn't expect you to have that ability," Thor said. The 3 Midgardians nearby were stunned as well. They knew Noah was from Earth. Did such magic exist there? "I'll show you something even more interesting." Noah grinned. Purple light flashed across his form, and the real Noah dissolved into a man in a black suit, slick-back hair, and a wicked smile. "Hey, brother." Noah, simulating Loki, gave a sly smile at Thor. Thor almost swung Mjolnir, then froze. If Loki hadn't been personally sent to stun prison by Thor, that trick might have fooled him. Noah hadn't used Loki's Shoma. He'd simulated the appearance by imagining it, a different kind of transformation. He intended to show the difference. Noah returned to his own shape, then reached out toward Thor. A faint purple halo began to gather around Thor. Thor felt nothing, but Queen Frigga, who was sensitive to all manner of energies, did. She detected that the halo had taken the smallest sliver of Thor's soul energy, so minute it wouldn't affect him even multiplied many times over, but enough for Noah's purposes. Using that tiny piece of Shoma, Noah transformed again. When the mist cleared, a golden-haired, broad-shouldered figure stood where Noah had been, dressed in Thor's armor, but with a neat, short haircut. "I am Thunder God Thor, for the glory of Asgard." Noah struck a pose and bellowed. "I like the line, but not the haircut. It's weird," Thor said, shuddering at the sight. He couldn't imagine ever cutting his hair like that. Thor, I think you look handsome with it, Jane said from the side. No, Jane, definitely not, Thor replied firmly. Then blue lightning crackled over Noah's transformed form. People gasped. Thor saw the electricity dancing around him, but he couldn't see his lightning coming from Noah's chest plate, yet the power felt unmistakably like his. Noah, you, Thor began. That's your power, Noah finished, eyes glowing with electric light. He could feel the sensation clearly. Nico's transformation in the game could inherit the attributes of her target. By borrowing even a sliver of Thor's Shoma, Noah had taken on some of Thor's abilities. The Noah-shaped Thor looked, for a moment, more Thor-like than Thor himself. Thor, I'm going to try something. I hope you don't mind. Meow meow, come here. Thor blinked. Noah's voice had slipped into Thor's cadence as he called the hammer. No, please don't, Thor muttered, watching in disbelief as Mjolnir on his belt began to vibrate. The hammer lifted, then flew toward Noah. Noah reached out, trying to catch it, but the hammer bypassed him and started to orbit him, as if assessing. Zzz. After a few revolutions, Mjolnir crackled and threw a tiny bolt, as if scolding an imposter, then zipped back to Thor's side. Thor laughed aloud, delighted. I knew it. Meow meow wouldn't be fooled. Noah transformed back into himself and shrugged. He felt a pang of disappointment. He'd almost earned the honor of lifting Mjolnir. One day, maybe, when he'd surpassed even Odin, he thought, but lifting it by winning the hammer's recognition wasn't in his plans. He knew his own philosophy wasn't quite on that level yet. The banquet buzzed even more after Noah's show. He relaxed into the revelry. Gwen had been enjoying herself all evening. Miss Jane, Queen Frigga wishes to speak with you. A maid approached Jane in a low voice. Me, okay. Jane's hands fluttered with nerves. She knew Frigga was Thor's mother. The maid led her to a quieter corner of the hall. There, an elegant woman with a gentle smile awaited. Hello, I'm Jane, Jane said, trying to steady her voice. Gwen, nearby, gave Jane's sleeve a playful pinch as if to cheer her on. Frigga's smile widened. Welcome, Jane of Midgard, the queen said warmly. I have heard of you. Come, sit. Tell me of the world you come from. Chapter 57. The party is over. Back to Earth. When Jane returned, she looked unusually unhappy. Thor immediately rushed over. Jane, what's wrong? I heard Mother called you in. Did she say something? He worried briefly that Frigga had been cold or rude to Jane, but then remembered how gentle she usually was. Noah, standing nearby, watched them and entertained a private image, Frigga tossing 5 million coins at Jane and saying, Leave my son. The fantasy quickly morphed. Asgard didn't use checks, into a handful of gold coins flying at Jane's face. Wouldn't that hurt? He smirked inwardly at the ridiculous mental movie. Jane forced a smile at Thor. No, Thor, your mother is very kind. She's been wonderful to me. It's just, she told me something that made me a bit worried. What did she say? Tell me and I'll help. Thor took her hand and looked earnestly at her. Jane recounted the conversation. At first, it had been pleasant. Frigga had been gentle, asking about their relationship, but then she'd grown serious. Jane, Frigga had said, taking her hand, I don't oppose you and Thor being together, but you should know this. We Asgardians can live for over 5,000 years, and Thor, as a member of the royal family, will live even longer. You must be prepared that you may grow old while Thor remains young. Thor's expression darkened. He had no idea how to fix that. His talents lay in battle, not in granting immortality. Then he looked up at Noah. Wasn't Noah a master of magic? Noah, please help. Find a way to make Jane live as long as I do. If you can, I'll repay you. Noah had been amusedly watching the exchange. Thor's appeal snapped him to attention. He considered possible Marvel World solutions. Infinity Stones. No, Jane couldn't handle that. Super Serum. Unlikely. Learning magic from the Ancient One. Possible, but did Jane have that talent? He thought of the scene in Avengers where Captain America grew old after staying in the past, but that wasn't helpful here. If Noah ever acquired the Dragon King's power, he could perhaps make Jane ascend, an easy fix, but that was in the future. I can't do that right now, Thor, Noah said after a moment. He had ways in his repertoire, but he didn't want to be everyone's miracle worker. You'll have to find a solution on your own for now. Thor squeezed Jane's hand. I understand. I'll ask my father once he wakes. Odin is wise. He'll know what to do. Jane softened at that and brushed off her worries. It was better to enjoy the present than to fret about an uncertain future. Try some of this. It's delicious. Gwen offered Noah a skewer. He tilted his head, saw her hopeful face, and took a bite. It really is good. He thought it almost matched an Asgardian chef like Lysandra. The banquet stretched through the day. Not everyone partied nonstop. Many who drank too much collapsed and slept right in the hall, an Asgardian custom with plenty of space for it. Noah and Gwen left early. Gwen, having sampled a lot of Asgardian fruit wine, was dizzy and swiftly fell into a deep sleep as soon as they reached Noah's room. He smoothed the blanket around her and received a groggy thank you before lying down on the other side of the large bed. It was the first time he'd slept in the same bed as a girl. He felt a little excited, quickly scolded himself, and settled in. There would be time later for more. Maybe. The next day, Thor escorted Jane back to the Bifrost Fortress to return to Asgard. Noah planned to go to Earth. Gwen, you'll love Earth, he told her. There's so much to see. Gwen's spiral ponytail bobbed. I'm excited to see your home. Thor had finished his farewells. Heimdall will send you back, he said, not reluctant. After all, the Bifrost was still intact and trips would be easy in the future. Noah hesitated at the entrance to the Bifrost. After Heimdall had activated the bridge and a rainbow portal began to open, Thor noticed Noah pausing. What's wrong? He asked. Noah's eyes were closed. He muttered, It really works. He'd thought of something when he arrived at the fortress. Could he use his teleport ability to sense his true sight on Earth from Asgard? Concentrating, he reached out with his magic and felt two distinct auras. One was the eye at his old home, the other was the true sight in his villa. Teleport being effective at such a distance excited him. If only he had a true sight control ward here, he could establish a permanent link between Asgard and Earth. The reconnaissance ward he had with him was invisible but temporary and required continual magical upkeep, too much trouble for frequent trips. He'd wait until he could draw a control ward again. Noah, you want to enter the Bifrost? Thor asked. No, I have my own way. Noah smiled. See you next time. Gwen added a polite, bye-bye, and when Heimdall's light pillar flared, Noah took Gwen's hand. Her cheeks flushed faintly. They had held hands before without thinking, but this was the first time Noah had asked outright. He squeezed her soft palm. In the game, teleport had been limited to one person, but in reality, his summon skills were growing along with his own power. Now teleport could carry more than one. A blue beam shot skyward, energy rippling outward. Thor shielded his eyes, while Heimdall watched with a curious frown. Then the light vanished. Noah and Gwen were gone. This power is similar to the Bifrost, Heimdall murmured. He hadn't expected Noah to master such ability. It's fitting for a wizard, Thor said with a grin. Noah felt space fold around them and the scenery warp. Nebula, streaks of light, a passage that resembled the Bifrost journey. Gwen, seeing such sights for the first time, squealed with delight. Noah kept a careful hold on her. He didn't want any mishap during ultra-long-distance teleportation. The trip was brief, less than 10 seconds, and then they arrived. On Earth, there were no dramatic effects. At Noah's villa, the true sight pulsed, a small flash, and Noah and Gwen appeared in the hall. Wow, this is Noah's home? It's beautiful, Gwen whispered, taking in the modern architecture. Her memories were mostly of older styles, so the villa fascinated her. Welcome back, Noah. Miss Gwen, hello. A voice said from the side, drawing Gwen's attention. Huh? After teleporting into the villa's main hall, Gwen looked around with curiosity. Many of the decorations were new to her. Just as she was about to ask Noah what the items were for, a mature, magnetic female voice came from behind. Gwen turned to see a spherical orb floating in the air, a large round eye fixed at its center. Noah, this is Lysandra. She's the first companion I summoned, so you can think of her as your companion. Noah said when he noticed Gwen's surprised, slightly open-mouthed expression, which struck him as oddly cute. Oh, hello, Sister Lysandra, Gwen blurted, embarrassed by her own face. The orb's appearance had been startling. She meant to ask why Lysandra looked like that, but Noah seemed to read her thoughts and explained first. Lysandra is an AI life form. Like us, she has a soul. Soon your sister Lysandra will have a body just like ours. The plan to build Lysandra a body had actually been finalized yesterday. Noah had only delayed starting the work. Yesterday, a black egg had shown up, and then the Thor mission cropped up, pulling his attention away. That had pushed the build back a day. Today, nothing would stop him. Oh, that sounds amazing. Gwen didn't really understand what Noah meant by AI, but she was sure it sounded powerful. Noah, what's that big black thing? Gwen asked, pointing at the huge black rectangle hanging on the wall. That's an LCD television. You can watch TV shows, movies, news, lots of things on it. Noah added, you might not get it fully yet, but basically that screen can show information from all over the world. He rarely used the TV. It had come with the house. He preferred a projection screen, which he found more convenient. How magical. I never imagined Noah's place would have such things. Gwen has never seen them before. Gwen's eyes shone. Now that she had a human body, she wanted to explore everything this world had to offer. Noah, there's something you might want to see, Lysandra said, and turned the TV on. The black screen sprang to life, startling Gwen. The image showed a street interview, a reporter asking passersby about the New Mexico meteorite incident. Several young people, likely college students, were being filmed. Hello, excuse me, how do you view the New Mexico meteorite incident? The reporter asked. A blond young man in the frame laughed. Are you live streaming this? Yes, the reporter replied. Meteorite? I heard Iron Man Tony and that swift-wind swordsman were there. There were lots of videos online. It wasn't just a meteorite, the young man said. His friends nodded. And now the government wants to use the meteorite to cover things up? Do they think we're idiots? We deserve the truth. Noah, look at this, Lysandra said, bringing up more footage. These clips switched to night scenes at Stark Expo. Reporters interviewed audience members after Justin Hammer's robots had started attacking. Some witnesses were still shaken. Then one passerby who could speak coherently told a reporter, Iron Man helped, but the person who really saved us was another superhero in high-tech armor. So cool, but I don't know his name. I know. He's called Swift-Wind Swordsman. Look at this video. A little boy nearby shouted, pulling out his phone. He played a clip that Noah instantly recognized. Hannah, Noah's classmate, had filmed it. In the video, Noah in the Source Project armor joked about titles and said he was called the Swift-Wind Swordsman before running up a wall toward a rooftop. As more interviews aired, people kept mentioning the same unfamiliar name. Hannah's clip, posted on her website, had gone viral. Overnight, countless people knew about a new superhero. Noah remembered letting Hannah film him. Otherwise, he could have had Lysandra delete it. He'd wanted to know what it felt like to be cheered and admired like Iron Man, but seeing the fallout made him think twice about embracing the superhero label. Oh, so that's how it happened, Noah said, nodding. He wasn't one for lofty ideals, and the idea of being a hero made him uneasy. If you became famous, a single misstep could turn public opinion against you. He'd seen that in movies and online. And if anyone ever tries to morally blackmail me online, he thought with a grim little humor, I'll trace their feed and give them a couple of slaps. See how they like it. He switched the screen off. Gwen had been startled by the living images on the black surface. For a moment, she'd wondered if the people on it were trapped inside the screen. Noah smiled at her curiosity. Gwen, I'll have Lysandra teach you the basics of how this world works. That'll help. Then I'll have someone set up a bedroom for you. It'll be your home from now on. Oh, okay. Since separating from her master, Gwen hadn't had a home. Becoming human and fighting with her sentinels of light had given her a sense of belonging. But now she had a new home in this world. Noah glanced around and quickly found what he was looking for. Blitzcrank, prepare a livable room for Gwen, the one next to my room. From the corner, a figure emerged from shadow, a white mechanical body revealing itself. Blitzcrank, the Apple robot, stepped forward. Yes, master, Blitzcrank's mechanical voice intoned. Hello, I'm Gwen. She realized there was another resident in the house, though it was a robot. Hello, Miss Gwen, Blitzcrank replied. If you need anything for your room, tell Blitzcrank directly. He can assemble items with nanomachines, within reason, of course. He won't be conjuring up a universe-spanning spaceship from nothing, Noah added. Lysandra, I'm entrusting Gwen's arrangements to you. No problem, Noah, Lysandra replied. Noah left the villa. He suited up and flew off, stealth engaged, toward a densely populated neighborhood. Nothing major was happening, just a string of C-class missions. Even small missions had to be done. Leaving them would be a waste. So Noah spent his afternoon doing what he called his routine of taking down thugs. Don't ask why scumbags show up even in daylight. Welcome to America. Current essence, 3,200 points. After finishing the missions, Noah returned to the laboratory, ready to begin creating Lissandra's body. Chapter 59, This Powerful Life Force. The laboratory was tiled with white metal floors, spotless and orderly, as any lab should be. Noah's workshop maintained that standard. Most of the materials Noah used contained vibranium, which made the place far safer than a conventional lab. There weren't many large instruments. The most conspicuous was a rectangular device in the center, something like Ultron's regeneration cradle. Inside it, liquid swirled, vibranium liquefied by Lissandra with special methods destined to form her body. Noah pressed his hand to the device's cold metallic surface and felt a surge of anticipation. Lissandra was the first companion he'd summoned. They hadn't shared much time together, but he already cared about her. "Noah, we can start," a voice said behind him. He turned. Lissandra, who he'd expected to be continuing Gwen's lessons, had appeared in the lab. He blinked in surprise. "Lissandra, shouldn't you still be teaching Gwen? Have you finished that quickly?" "The teaching continues," Lissandra replied. "But I can operate multiple bodies at once. I'm here now." Oh, Noah recalled the time he'd controlled 9 clones. If he had Lissandra's ability to split attention, he could do a lot more without trouble. "Then can we start?" he asked. "Yes, whenever you're ready." Noah rubbed his palms and walked to the control panel. He placed his hand on the start button. "Lissandra, I'm going to begin." "Okay, Noah." He pressed the button. The device hummed to life, and a blue light swept its outer shell. The vibranium liquid churned. Lissandra moved to the machine and transformed strands of data cable, connecting them to the cradle. Under her guidance, the liquefied vibranium broke down to the nano level and began assembling human cells. Slowly, those cells formed tissue. Tissue became limbs and a torso. The human shape appeared first without features. Then, as Lissandra fine-tuned the process, eyes, nose, and mouth took shape. Fingers flexed for the first time. "Noah." At the final stage, Lissandra whispered. It was his turn. He had promised to sculpt Lissandra's face once the body was ready. He opened the virtual sculpting interface and reached for the screen, but his hand froze. He'd forgotten one thing. He had no idea what Lissandra's face looked like. In the game, she always wore a mask, only her chin visible. How could he sculpt features he hadn't seen? There was another option. "System, what does Lissandra look like?" Noah asked simply. The system answered, transmitting the data into his mind. Noah felt his face heat as a full, unfiltered projection of Lissandra's body and appearance flooded him. No clothes, no inhibition. He swore under his breath and quickly covered his eyes with one hand to steady himself. The system was thorough, unforgivingly so. Clearing his throat, Noah got to work. His fingers moved in a blur across the virtual interface. Under his hands, the nano-vibranium body responded like clay to a master sculptor, features sharpened, delicate details refined. He matched the face to the image the system had shown him. He made a few subtle adjustments to satisfy his own tastes. Finally, with the last stroke, the faceless figure became a person, an exquisite face over a perfect figure. Beneath that beauty, a cool aloofness lingered, Lissandra's presence, even in appearance. Noah hovered, trying not to stare at the unclothed form. He was pleased with his work and turned toward Lissandra. "It's done." "Do you like it?" she asked. A flush warmed his cheeks. "Yes. If you don't like it, I can change it," he added, nervous. Had she noticed his secret tweaks? Lissandra's voice was calm. "I like it very much. The body you made matches 99% of what I had planned. It's uncanny." Noah felt a jolt of surprise. He suspected the resemblance wasn't coincidence. Perhaps because of some link between her code and the hero model, Lissandra's chosen appearance echoed the Ice Witch Lissandra of the game. 99%. He let the thought trail off. Now the crucial part remained. Lissandra, as a program, had already transcended simple code and developed an independent consciousness. She could bind that consciousness to a body, but she could also leave it when she wished. Noah watched as the floating spherical form Lissandra used while teaching dimmed and descended. The same change had already occurred with the Lissandra that had been with Gwen. If Lissandra hadn't told Gwen beforehand, Gwen might have thought something had gone wrong. Now for the final step, Noah said, exhaling. He produced the Resolve rune. In Valoran's legends, the world rune created all life. The Resolve rune in his hand embodied the power of life. Noah intended to channel that power into Lissandra's body and make it truly alive. He had never tried anything like this before and wasn't certain his current control over runes would be enough. He opened a circular hatch on the device and activated the rune. Unlike the cold, destructive energies he'd used before, this power thrummed with warmth and vitality. Streams of life energy flowed into the new body, the laboratory filled with a vibrant hum. Noah urged the rune on, anxiety giving way to determination. Damn it! Explode, resurrection wind, shield bash, revitalize, resurrection wind, bone plating, overgrowth, revitalize, unflinching, all powers work for me, create life. His will fused with the rune. With a resonant buzz, the Resolve rune answered. Life surged outward in a tremendous bloom. Noah sensed the difference. The nanovibranium construct, which had previously been cold and mechanical in his perception, now inhaled and exhaled with something like a soul. He felt the living breath of the body. They had succeeded. Lysandra was no longer merely code. She had life. The burst of life energy didn't stop there. It radiated outward, transforming the estate and its surroundings within kilometers. Trees and flowers grew with wild abandon. Fish in the nearby sea swelled as they absorbed the pure life force. The plants in Noah's garden changed most of all. Gwen, peering out a window, tilted her head at the sudden overgrowth and frowned in confusion. Inside the lab, unaware of the changes beyond the estate, Noah watched the hatch split open. Lysandra's eyelashes trembled, then her eyes opened. The hatch parted, and she pushed herself upright. She looked at her hands, feeling temperature, texture, sensation like a new language. Her palm went to her chest. She felt a faint, steady heartbeat. "How do you feel?" Noah asked. Lysandra stood. Her skin was pale and flawless, and she didn't seem embarrassed by her nakedness. Instead, she stepped forward and embraced him. Because she was standing inside the device, she was slightly elevated. Noah's face sank into the warmth of her body. His eyes widened. He'd never been this close to a girl in his life. Vibranium bodies can be soft, he thought, astonished. After a moment, Noah disentangled himself. "You can let go now," he said, laughing a little. Lysandra's fingers lingered on him. "Noah, I can feel your warmth, your scent, your aura. Is this what it means to be human?" Noah smiled. The characters the system summoned tended naturally toward him. Lysandra and Gwen both showed tenderness and loyalty, perhaps because he had created and bound them. He liked the feeling this inspired. He simply stood there, feeling the warmth of the living woman he'd helped bring into being. Chapter 60. Cut, cut, cut! When they climbed up from the underground laboratory, Lysandra was already dressed in modern clothes, a black midi skirt and a small blue blouse. Her pale calves caught the lab lights and looked almost luminous. Noah and Lysandra walked side by side through the lab and out the door. What's going on?" Noah asked as he stepped outside. What should have been bright sunlight was dimmed by a vast shadow. He looked up, frowning. The manor was enveloped in huge vegetation, plants that disturbingly looked familiar, like the ones from his own backyard. Did Ivern cast his W, or did Maokai use his ult? Noah asked, half joking, staring at the towering flora. Lysandra's eyes flickered with data as she scanned the growth. "These plants have absorbed a concentrated force and undergone profound alteration," she said. "I deduce that when you used the Resolve rune, Noah, some of the released energy escaped. The nearby plants absorbed that raw life energy and mutated." "No kidding," Noah said. "When I activated the Resolve rune, I tried to contain the energy, but a bit must have leaked out." The rune's signature was unmistakable. Now the air around the manor thrummed with residual magic. "With such a disturbance, won't the outside world detect it? Satellites will probe this area," Noah fretted. The rune's influence might extend beyond the estate. It would be hard to hide a transformation on this scale. "Lysandra, rest assured," Lysandra replied calmly. "I installed anti-surveillance measures the first day I arrived. Within a 10-kilometer radius, satellites only see what I allow them to see." "Noah, you've thought of everything. You're amazing," he said, relieved. There were things he couldn't handle alone. He leaned on Lysandra, his capable assistant. Lysandra smiled faintly and swept a strand of golden hair back from her shoulder. Having only just become human, she was adapting remarkably well. From the villa balcony, Gwen leaned on the railing and called out, astonished. Noah, the trees in the yard have gotten huge. Gwen noticed the unfamiliar woman beside Noah. Long golden hair, a tall, composed presence. Lysandra reminded her of Isolde, her master. She blinked the image away and remembered Noah's earlier comment about Lysandra's body. Could this be her? Noah turned to the balcony and waved. Lysandra smiled at Gwen, the summoned girl whose presence still earned Lysandra a small fondness. Otherwise, Lysandra's attitude toward other humans remained cool. Gwen, come down. It's time to work, Noah called. Coming right away, Gwen replied. She braced with both hands and leaped over the balcony rail from 3 stories up. A blue holy aura, Sheng-Ai, swirled around her, concealing whatever lay inside it. Gwen floated down, landing within the halo. When the aura faded, she bounced to the ground, grinning and spinning a pair of giant scissors she kept at her waist. Noah, what do you want Gwen to help with? She asked, fidgeting happily with the blades, though she wasn't sure what to do next. Noah, do you see this huge forest? I need you to clear it out, Noah said. Gwen pouted. Ha! You want me to do that? Gwen's scissors aren't for this. No, but I'll let you try something you've always wanted to experience, Noah said, trying to sound tempting. Ever since Asgard, Gwen had been pestering Noah to use his wild growth on her. She wanted to try being enlarged, but he had always refused, partly because of clothing concerns. At the mention of the magic, she brightened. Oh, really? Gwen agrees. Let's do it. Ready? Noah asked. He raised his hand and sent purple magic from his fingertips. It struck Gwen. A patterned magic circle bloomed under her feet, and her body began to swell. She laughed as she rose taller and taller. Soon she was nearly as high as Noah's villa, roughly 10 meters tall. Ah, I'm so tall, Gwen crowed. Noah, watching, reminded her, careful, don't step on the statues. Her strides now spanned more than 10 meters. Standing before the mutated plants, which at her size looked only like slightly oversized shrubs, Gwen hefted her oversized scissors and began to snip. Snip, snip, snip. The blades left after images as she swung. Enormous branches and leaves were severed and fell. They didn't just fall, they plunged, carrying plenty of force. Noah didn't wait for them to smash into the grounds. He raised a hand and wove a catching spell, easily halting each tumbling limb and leaf, collecting them into a neat pile in an open space for Blitzcrank to handle later. He could have let the robots do all the cleanup, but Noah found it amusing to orchestrate things himself. If Gwen's scissors could tailor clothes, could she become a gardener if used on shrubs, or a hairstylist if used on people? He entertained a silly image of keeping his hair long so Gwen could cut it, cosplaying Yasuo, maybe. Little moments like this would help Gwen fit into the house. At the moment, their family was just the 3 of them, but they could build memories. Faster, faster, Gwen sang as she moved, even quoting her own voice line. Skip and slash. At one point, she passed so close that Noah caught an accidental glimpse beneath her skirt and immediately coughed to cover himself. After a while, Gwen squatted and finished trimming the bases of the plants. Sunlight poured back into the manor. The magic faded, and she shrank back down to her usual 1.8 meters, inspecting her hands with a look of mild disappointment. There'll be plenty more chances. Don't rush, Noah said gently. Gwen's face showed everything she felt. She nodded and remembered something. Oh, Sister Lysandra was teaching me, and then stopped. She didn't finish. Lysandra waved, and from a device at Noah's waist poured a stream of nanosubstances that formed into her original spherical teaching avatar. Gwen, let's continue our lesson, the sphere said in Lysandra's voice. Gwen glanced between them. Noah, Lysandra, where are you going? Noah and Sister Lysandra's body has just been completed, Noah answered. We're going out to test it. Gwen, stay here and study for now. I'll bring you something fun when we get back. Under Gwen's curious gaze, Noah strapped on his battle armor and rose into the sky with Lysandra. Lysandra wasn't wearing armor. She simply flew using magnetic levitation technology, the patent for which had not been integrated into Noah's suit yet. She rose smoothly, no propulsion visible, a demonstration of her own engineering. Wow, you're flying. I'm so jealous, Gwen murmured, watching them go. Then she went back into the room with the spherical Lysandra to continue her studies, apeftistically. imgrhabab.com sur series 50 bon forum car and for failed our JPEG. I am a Powercry Commander Stewart and Forest Sif is a thumb say babe rose eye JPEG. Corpse Party.